Give me the cue, Russ. This special meeting of the Judson Board of Trustees is hereby called to order at 4:00 p.m. I'm very pleased you've taken time to join us this afternoon. As the Judson Board of Trustees, we're here to set goals and policies and oversee the management of the district. We're responsible for approving budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and to listen to reports from the superintendent. We're not here to make administrative or management decisions pertaining to the daily operations of the district, as that is the responsibility of the superintendent. In compliance with the state government code on open meetings, today's agenda has been appropriately posted. This is a meeting in public, not a meeting of the public. As our guests, you're welcome to observe and listen. These proceedings are being video and audio recorded and will become part of Judson's permanent legal record. In order that the tape adequately reflects these proceedings, please silence your mobile devices and refrain from talking while others are speaking. Since it's legally mandated that these proceedings are recorded accurately, I may have to ask for order periodically should I notice that distractions are interfering with our recording capabilities. Once again, I extend a sincere welcome to each of you from the entire school board. Thank you for your interest in Judson ISD. We do have a quorum, and I will call roll. Ms. Stanford?
Present.
Ms. Faulkner?
Here.
Ms. Ryan?
Present.
Mr. Macias?
Present.
Mr. Salinas?
Present.
And please note that Ms. Eaton is unable to be with us this afternoon. The next item on our agenda is public comment. This is a time for citizens, staff, or students to provide their comments to the board. A meeting that's open to the public under the Act is one that the public is entitled to attend. However, the Act does not give the public a right to speak at such public meetings except to address their grievances through the proper channels. As a courtesy to the public, the Judson Independent School District Board of Trustees allows time for public comment. Statements and questions from the audience are not permitted during other portions of the meeting, so you must sign up for public audience when you have comments to present. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to complete his or her comments. As the presiding officer, I will enforce that time limit. Also, profanity, yelling, inappropriate, uncivil, or discriminatory comments will not be permitted. In accordance with Judson ISD Board Policy BED Local, in the event your comment, in my judgment as the presiding officer, constitutes a complaint or charge against an employee or officer, it will be necessary for me to interrupt you, ask you to stop, and direct you to seek resolution of your complaint through the district's appropriate formal grievance policy. DGBA for employee complaints, F&G for student or parent complaints, or GF for public complaints. By law, the Judson Independent School District Board of Trustees cannot lawfully discuss, deliberate, make comments, or make a decision on any matter raised in the public comment period which is not specifically listed on the board agenda for this meeting. If you have any handouts to distribute to the board, please hand them to the secretary to the Board of Trustees in the back of the room. With these cautions in mind, we'll be glad to hear general comments. And I have one person who signed up to speak, Matthew Fields, who's talking about board goals. Mr. Fields?
Yes, you do.
Good afternoon, board members, board president, and Dr. Fields. I'm coming before you today since my name came up in the last board meeting, and today we are discussing board goals. I wanted to first introduce myself. I have been the owner of a multi-million-dollar software company, had companies around the world, owned a newspaper and a magazine, owned a restaurant and a bar. I've built and designed homes in very large complexes. I have managed IT for global companies, and I have fought corruption in government. I fought abuse as a child and was removed from my home at the age of 10 due to physical abuse. I was placed back in the home a year and 10 days later, and I became a runaway at the age of 15. I bounced from boys' home to boys' home for the next few years. I have fought, and I have survived all of these things. I started a program here at Judson to help identify students being bullied, abused, and possibly suicidal. In doing so, I reviewed roughly 30,000 alerts a day for 365 days a year for about 5 years and roughly 18 hours a day. I helped build up a program that we use today with the same thing. This is all to say hello. I'm Matthew Fields. I wanted to tell you that I do not need to work here, but I choose to. I worked here for 6 years being underpaid by $25,000 a year before I became the executive director of technology and effectively replaced 3 directors in technology. Money is not and never has been a desire for me. My desire is to make a difference and bring children out of a dark place I was in as a child and be an effective piece of their success. I don't seek validation for things I have done, and everyone will tell you I oftentimes give credit to others rather than myself. I have heard from many staff, teachers, admins, custodians, auxiliary personnel, police officers, and more, and they have expressed a deep disgust with the decorum in this room. I personally have received attacks on my character since the last board meeting, and will quote someone who said, "Matthew Fields, you are a perfect example of why parents don't feel safe taking their kids to Judson ISD because they know administration doesn't take acts of violence from students towards others seriously. Part of my job is to address safety and security, and you can speak to safety coordinators and law enforcement and school officials around Texas who will tell you Judson is far ahead of everyone in safety and security. I'm proud to say, in addition, there are laws in Texas that have words I have said verbatim in them. I take safety and security very, very seriously. I worked my full-time job as Executive Director of Technology and the Director of Safety and Security for months uncompensated because I am so serious about it. And I can assure you that that job is too much for just one person. But due to the rhetoric that is used in these boardrooms, the community isn't hearing that side of Judson. Instead, they're hearing venomous words that are perpetuating hate and division that denigrates our students, staff, and local officials, and has created a divide that's a mile wide. I would like to ask formally that this rhetoric stop and be prohibited from discussion. If you have something to say, then bring solutions and create solidarity. I want to remind everyone that Uvalde was tragic, and there are hundreds of pages of reports that state actions were not taken expeditiously due to communication errors and having a team that was not unified. This doesn't mean stop demanding changes. Let's just do it professionally. We can't succeed in helping students and staff feel safe or decrease anxiety around safety when they're being told all the time here and on Facebook that they aren't safe and their schools are playgrounds for violent crimes, carried weapons, illicit drugs, and so on. Please remember this today as you're going through your team goals and duties. And thank you for your time. And to every student that may listen to this, I want to let you know you are strong and in control of your own success. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Fields. All right, we're going to go out of order just a little bit. We want to go ahead and move to item 3B so that we can let our principal who's here for that particular item leave, not have to hang around. Oh, I'm sorry, 4B, excuse me. You're right.
Hold on,
4B. Well, I made a circle and it went over 3, and I'm not perfect. I'm still learning and growing. I keep saying that. So item 4B, consider, discuss, and take possible action regarding approval of the targeted improvement plan for the campus that is required to implement state-directed interventions, Kirby Middle School. Dr. Fields?
Yes, ma'am. This is simply a targeted improvement plan that needs to be submitted to TEA. The reason why we asked that it be put on the agenda was because it is due February 28th. So it's not unlike a campus improvement plan, but it's comprehensive because it's a targeted campus. We ask that the board approve this so we can have it submitted by Friday.
Is there any discussion about the improvement plan? Everyone had a chance to review it in board book. Did you have something?
No, I'm just saying I didn't really get a chance to.
Okay. Mr. Saline, did you have any questions? Mr. Macias?
Yeah.
Let him go because I know yours will be ample.
Obviously, the timeline of this is something that just came up. That's why we're doing it today. I want to make sure I understand that.
It's my understanding, Dr. Topic, who was unable to be here today, came to me and said that, hey, we need to get this targeted improvement plan submitted by Friday, and asked if we could, or at least by the 28th of February, and asked if we could get it put on this agenda, and that's why it was put on.
And really, I respect and I appreciate that, and we will, and I will obviously approve this because it needs to be done.
Yes, sir.
But it just gets me thinking, and the only reason I'm saying this is because there's still a lot more to do with all of our middle schools in terms of trying to address certain things. Kirby needs, I mean, they have a plan, right? We have to submit one. So, but Metzger and Judson Middle School and all of them. So I guess in the future, I'm probably going to bring something to the agenda because this is just to get an idea of what we're doing in those areas. And my frustration, if you hear my voice, isn't towards administration. I know you guys are doing what you need to do. My frustration is the lack of resources that we have available to do innovative things in the middle school area, or anywhere in the district. So I've really been thinking a lot about what we need to do, because these have been problems that we've had for a long time. So anyway, I just used that moment to say that piece of it, because there's obviously more to the conversation. But thank you.
I appreciate your feedback. I do feel like there's things that we could probably implement at the middle school level, but we are doing innovative things at many of the campuses throughout the district, middle school. I know at Woodlake Hills Middle School, early college prep, and then at Metzger, we have blended learning, and then in Kirby, we've got the STEM. And we've done the campus improvement plans. It's just that this one has to be submitted to you.
And that's why I want to make sure I'm really strong with that. I know we've done the best with what we've had, but the frustration is if we could hire 20 more counselors or 20 more RTIs or just any of those things to support academic and social emotional support on the campuses, that would be great. We're going to be lowering our student or our campus enrollment at middle schools next year with an intention. So that's something we're trying to do that's supposed to help.
Yes.
But my frustration is I just wish we had more resources, and we're having to wrestle with deficit budget. So again, I just want to know again that we'll talk about this later in the future. But this Kirby thing is just a necessary direction we have to go for protocol purposes, is what it sounds like.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Ryan?
I guess to piggyback off that, you get to targeted improvement plan after a certain number of years being federally identified as needing assistance. What year is this that we're to targeted improvement plan?
I believe you become targeted improvement plan once you are identified as a comprehensive campus.
Correct.
Okay.
And
Go ahead,
Ms.
please.
Davis and Mr. Roscoe, if I misspeak, please help me. With the accountability formula, a campus can actually be forced into this position. If you were to earn 2 Ds, it would trigger over into a forced accountability trigger, right? So instead of an F, right, 2 Ds forces you into that position. In addition to the targeted improvement plan and their campus improvement plan, every campus also has a strategic plan. As Dr. Fields was saying, this one just has to be approved by TEA. And to your point, Mr. Macias, the reason why it seems like it took a little bit longer is because this goes through a very detailed review process before it actually comes to you guys.
Yes, because I guess where it confused me, you get targeted and they identify those subpopulations I've been talking about the last couple meetings, and that's why I look at subpopulations, because they will get you federally recognized in certain categories. So when I look at this, I look, it's got what those subpopulations are, both subject and the different, labels that the state and federal government put on children. And so, but then I don't see those specific things addressed in here. Like, these seem like very generic things we do all the time everywhere. So if we're having challenges with math for economically disadvantaged students, I'm trying to figure out what are we doing this year that's different than we've done in the past, that is going to go after each of these specific groups and subjects that are the subject of the target, right?
Absolutely.
Essentially.
So, and Ms. Davis, by all means, if I misspeak, please help me. A target improvement plan is general in sense of compliance. When you talk about the targets set forth each 9 weeks and then monitoring those targets and then coming back and figuring out whether or not that strategy was effective or not, rolling it over to the next 9 weeks or adjusting it, that's a piece that you guys would not necessarily improve. That is the strategic plan at the campus level. This is more, yes, we identify based on our taper and our accountability, these are the groups that we need to target. It won't necessarily go into the specific interventions for each one of those groups. Now, for you guys, I want to be very clear. At the campus level, there is a very detailed strategic plan.
Okay, I guess maybe this will come up more with Dr. Gibson, because that is part of what we do as part of our oversight in these strategic things is we look at what are the strategies? Like, how are we applying resources, policies, programs, and making sure, because, I don't care about labels that the federal and state wants to give us. I care about the kids at Kirby, right? Like, there are kids that are struggling, and they've identified, and it's been consistent that they're struggling over a period of time, the same types of groups. And so, what can we do to help those kids? Like, what can the board do? What are you guys doing? What does that look like? How are we gonna measure that to make sure that Kirby Middle School specifically, and then at different times we'll address all the other schools, right? But this is about what does Kirby need, and how are we gonna measure if what we're giving them is working for them? Does that make sense, that question about why, like from a strategic level, that this matters to us?
If I may, part of the targeted improvement plan process is the principal and the district coordinator for school improvement, who is Dr. Duhar-Toppin. They meet periodically, quarterly actually, with TEA. And so all of those things that you just described, because that targeted improvement plan becomes a requirement from TEA to the campus when the campus is federally identified as either comprehensive or targeted, that is those discussions that they have directly with the TEA school improvement specialists. And so they get into that very granular detail where they ask specifically for accountability related to scores and stars. Then they also focus on what you are doing culturally to improve that campus. So those details normally aren't discussed with the board, they're normally discussed with the TA school improvement specialist, as well as with their cabinet and superintendent, because it's the operational pieces of the campus. What we bring forth as a requirement for TEA is that the targeted improvement plan, once it's been discussed and delineated to the level that is satisfactory for TEA, then comes to the board for approval. I hope that helps.
It does, it just makes us sound like we're like rubber stampers, like we put some stuff down on here just to make TEA happy, but that's all we're proving is making TEA happy, so we're gonna put that we do PLCs, well, we always do PLCs. I guess I just can't see the connection, that's how that's helping those kiddos at Kirby. So that, it's really hard to not be able to see how any of this is actually going to help any of these things on here, because these are what we do at every school, it feels like, so.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
if I may.
Am I not looking at this right? Am I not
Well,
asking my 10 questions that I'm supposed
Well,
to ask?
here in a little bit of part of what we're going to talk about are strategic roundtables and getting in a system of those, and that is absolutely the time that you're setting aside to dig deep into
Okay.
this very topic.
Okay, so by the time we get TIPs, we would have already done a bunch of strategic roundtables and have talked about this already?
That would be the hope.
Okay, so over the last year, we would have been talking about Kirby enough.
Correct, at least-
That when this comes forward.
No surprise.
We all know we've talked about the kiddos at Kirby already.
You talked about it ad nauseum.
I think
Okay,
we have
okay.
talked about it. And I would ask Denise and Nicole to probably come up and speak, but we've gone up at the campus. It's not like, we are making improvements, not to the level that we want. And I would say that the area in which we're talking about has struggled for quite some time, even in primary grades.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at, trying to improve
Yeah.
things from kindergarten
Yeah.
up to. And we've implemented stuff like the STEM account over at the campus as well, in an effort to do something different for that middle school. So there's a bunch of implementations that we've done that aren't routine, that we do at every campus.
That's what it feels like, it's not captured on here though. Like we took a grant, we're gonna make it a STEM academy, and this is how it's gonna help math for economically disadvantaged kids. This is what we think's gonna happen this year.
And I think that's
Because you
what's-
are doing great things, I just can't see it on here.
And I understand, and I'm not saying that this is inclusive of everything that they speak to target improvement plan, or not even a plan, but the person that they speak with on a normal basis and communicate with. This isn't inclusive of everything that they're doing. This is what the requirement is from the state of Texas that needs to be improved.
And just so I'm clear, I also echoed some of the same sentiments, but I realize we're doing something. I don't want to be lost.
Yeah.
The statement of, hey, we're not doing anything, what are we doing?
I didn't
We
say
are,
that.
we
I didn't say
are.
that, so please don't
That
misquote me,
was
Mr. Macias.
That was inferred.
Do
We're
not
doing nothing, we're rubber
misquote me.
stamping.
Well,
When we're rubber
do not
stamping, means we're
misquote
doing
me.
nothing, right? Which we are doing something.
Yeah, stop
So,
misquoting.
it's not, that's exactly what you meant. So I want to make sure the audience is clear, people are clear. There are things we're doing The frustration is we need to do more, and we have a lack of resources, which was my whole complaint. I want to see Kirby, Kitty Hawk, Metzger, Woodlake, all of the middle schools impacted in some way. So that's my point.
And again, I would like to point out that there are some things that are at board level, and some things that are at district level, and some things that are at campus level. This is the board level, because we're kind of like TEA in that regard. So this is what we approve.
Right.
At the district level, they come up with the more detailed plans, and at the campus level, it's even more detailed because it's then person by person by person.
Correct.
But that is beyond our purview on the board. We're up here. We're not down in the nitty gritty. So today, we want to approve what has to go to TEA. And then at another time, if there is more interest, we could ask for a presentation on what's happening at a more granular level at the campus level.
And Mr. Foyer, that's what I mentioned too. I'm going to put this on the agenda, to
Sure.
talk more about the middle schools, because that's our ability to do that.
Right.
We want to dig a little deeper.
Right. Ms. Stansford, I heard you say you had a question?
Yeah. Could you identify CTG? I'm just not clear on what that stands for.
CTGM?
Can you read it to me?
It's on the chart. It's got bottom 5% CTG score cut point, CTG score, overall score cut point, overall score. So it's a CTG.
It's in the blue on the chart.
Closing the gap.
Yes, thank you.
Closing the gap score.
That's your domain.
Got it.
Okay, so I notice we've got some missing areas. We've got an overall score in 2022, nothing in 23 or 24.
They weren't rated.
Again,
Because
we can have them come up and speak to all of that. This was just what was needed to be submitted to the board for approval, but Nicole, if you could come up and speak to exactly.
I'm just trying to understand what placed Kirby in this category, and if there's any other middle schools. Is this the only one?
Okay, so you're missing the missing data that is there is because we weren't rated. So since we haven't received our official ratings, they've changed the way I'm having to do my tip for this year. In the past, I would have started this back as soon as scores were released and we got our official ratings in the summer. I would have started meeting with TEA in the summer and had all of those meetings. But because accountability is on hold, they've changed our protocol for what we're doing for the tip this year. So all they're doing is an overview, and because I am in a grant as well, that they are focusing on, because I just actually met with my TEA representative last week, we're focusing on what I can do for the leadership capability part, what I can do with growing my leadership team to have an impact moving down. So that's why the tip that you see is only focused mainly on what we do at that level. And then because we still don't have our official ratings yet, it's still, that's why there's that gap. And with what Dr. Saunders was talking about, the forced aspect. So this March 4th will be my third year at Kirby. The first year I was there, Kirby was a C under the new scale. They changed it the next year, so I dropped down to an F. I would have been a D, I could have been a D this year, but with nothing being released, it would have been based on what Ms. Orozco was also saying, because if I receive a D in 3 or more categories, I have no choice but to be an F according to TEA. Even though I could have scored a D, TEA is going to say, well, you scored a D in 3 categories, you have no choice, you are a forced F. So this would have been my third year comprehensive, which is why I'm still having to do a tip to submit to TEA.
All right, so what triggered the need for this is the 3 years. Okay, so
Yes,
it's not
ma'am.
really showing on.
So even if I would have, even though I made a C that first year,
Yeah.
because I was still identified as improvement required before, I stay as improvement required, and I would have had to stay a C 3 consecutive years in a row to be able to have that IR dropped. Because I didn't, I stay as comprehensive needs.
Okay, so we had a C and an F, and then we don't.
Whatever we're gonna end up with this year, yes
But
ma'am.
we're assuming it's gonna put us here anyway.
I'm hoping not, because
But we're
my
just being
kids earned a D,
proactive.
so I'm hoping I get that, but
We've
yes
seen
ma'am.
We're being proactive.
Yes,
We've
yes
seen
ma'am.
improvement.
And there is improvement in my data that we have seen from MAP and from interim, and even improvement from last year. So it is growing, but it's just the way that TEA has it. I have to be out of it for 3 years, so I'm identified for 3 years.
And we have seen progress, so the last domain 3, closing the gap for this federal identification, was comprehensive progress, which means the campus is making progress. And so what we're seeing right now is we hope that that progress continues, and then it'll be an exit.
Okay, so we're pretty much jumping into this proactively.
Yes, ma'am.
Before we're even
Absolutely.
required to.
Yes, ma'am.
And just one other thing, I noticed under barriers to the plan, we've got time management, which is a barrier to all our lives anyway. But resistance to new procedure is listed as a barrier in every category.
Yes, ma'am.
Principal, administration, academic coaches, and teachers. So what are you encountering with resistance to? new
So it's, at my campus in particular, I have very experienced and very new. I have very little in the middle. And so when we brought this about, when we do our campus needs assessment every year, one of the first things that we talk to them is, with new procedures moving forward based on our data, my new teachers are resistant because they don't know.
And programmatic implementation.
Yes, especially with the STEM and moving that up with 7th grade next year, I'm already having those conversations with them. And then talking with the teachers, they're nervous about, one, not having the experience, and two, those that have been in it 10 plus years, they're very much, they like the way it is. And when we throw new standards at them, when we throw new data points at them, when we throw this, it kind of, we always tell them, the motto I always tell them is, hey, I'm gonna move your cheese, but we're gonna do it together.
Change
And
is
so
hard.
it's just, yes, it's just talking them through that. And so when we initially did this, that is one of the most common things. And so Penny McCool, who is my TEA rep, said, pick the 2 top things. And so it's time management and then that resistance. And so there are other barriers, but those are the 2 top ones. Yes, ma'am.
But do you feel STEM is being received well? I would
Yes,
think so.
ma'am.
I mean, those signs that were done were beautiful.
So I will say yes, and the word that is traveling down to our elementaries when we had our 5th grade showcase, like I said, since I've been there, and the teachers that have been there before me and the staff that have been there before me said we had the largest turnout at our 5th grade showcase for our incoming 6th graders than we have had.
Oh, that's great.
So, yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you so much.
Anything else? All right, may I have a motion?
I move that we approve the targeted improvement plan for Kirby Middle School as required to be implemented for interventions.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Faulkner, second by Mr. Macias. I'll do a roll call vote on this. Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Faulkner?
Yes.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Macias?
Yes.
Mr. Salinas?
Yes.
And I am also a yes, so that is a 6-0 vote for that. All right, now we're going to move back up to item 3A, hold team building, team of 8, and evaluating and improving student outcomes training as required by statute, provided by Dr. Gibson from Oak Casey LLC. Dr. Gibson.
I lost the clicker.
Oh, here it is.
You see it?
Oh, on the
Okay,
end of the table.
all right.
Everything blends into these dark tables.
I think if I understand it, this microphone is not amplifying anything, but we're recording. So I mean, okay, got a thumbs up that we're making sure that everyone can hear it. And I know someone is rolling in from out of town and a PowerPoint comes up and everybody's like, oh my gosh, here we go. I promise you, I will stay true to my normal training hours granted through discussions about your work, not talking at you with a PowerPoint. And so we're going to get into the scorecard here in just a little bit and get an update from the scorecard. But there was a question earlier, Ms. Ryan, that, and I was jotting down a note, and you said my name right when I was jotting it down, because I'll point out here in a little bit, maybe a paradigm shift in thinking about performance management moving forward and what that looks like. And it does line up with some of the conversation that just occurred. And if it's okay, President Canoyer, I'll use that as an example of how, you know, you could make a slight little tweak that, you know, might make a difference. So again, give me, Dr. Fields, 8 minutes.
Understood.
It is a half-day PowerPoint. Give me 8 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So I'm just in way of just framing it up, all of this work is continuous improvement, and it's Peter Singy's 5th discipline and total quality management. I've told you all that before. Broke every rule on PowerPoint, there's too many words on there, but Peter Singy's 5th discipline is this thick. I mean, it's 3 inches thick, so this is a very small quote from it. But he does talk about the creative tension, and in some ways that conversation was just talked about. If you pull, a rubber band doesn't work unless there's some tension. It's just a piece of rubber, just sitting there. So we're trying to get the right amount of tension. And my observation as an outsider is we all have different opinions of that's too tight, that's not enough, that's too much, right? Like everybody has a different opinion.
Like porridge.
Like porridge, that's exactly right. And I have a friend that says I have 7 board members, that means I have 21 opinions to deal with, and I had to think about. So I think there was an assumption of 3 opinions from every board member, but I've never experienced that myself. But in some ways, we can frame this up. There's a lot of ways to think about this metaphor. The one that really comes to my mind is your subject matter experts or the tactical team that we've talked about. Because they work here all day together, they kind of have a hold of one side of the rubber band. We believe strongly that the board or the strategic team collectively has a hold of the other side of the rubber band. And so we're trying to find the right balance to keep the right amount of tension on it. So just hold that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about a performance management system. And then this is 100% germane to the conversation that just occurred. No amount of external accountability will matter in the absence of internal accountability. So we just had a 15-minute conversation, and I'm not making light of it. Don't take that the wrong way. But that's external accountability system. We just heard a report about the external accountability system. We're trying to create a performance management system where we're holding ourselves together as a strategic team and a tactical team all the way to the operational team, that we have these standards internalized so that the external questions, when they arise, fit in the context of this internal conversation we were already having, if that makes sense. So it doesn't feel like there was a meeting happening and then all of a sudden there's a report that's like we would have known this report was coming, which I think was kind of said earlier. It would have been part of the conversation. So that slide, I'm going to do what I just did about 5 times in the next 6 minutes. So just get ready for it, because that slide came to mind when we were talking a moment ago. Let me pause. Does that make sense what Richard Airmore is saying? Like we can talk all day long about external accountability. We have to have an internal system. Okay, so.
Yeah, that's what, when I talk about oversight, our roles, it's really about, they tell us what they're gonna do every day, and then that's our job to hold them internally accountable for what they said that they were gonna do. So when we ask questions, we have to ask questions. We don't have a choice, otherwise we're just sitting here, right? Otherwise, why elect us,
Right.
There has to be some tension on the rubber band where we have to ask, hey, what are we doing to fix, this, or this? And then how do we hold, everyone accountable for doing what they said they were gonna do, and then measuring whether or not that works or not.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about team trust, and we've talked about team trust with the board, and then team trust within the cabinet, and then the next phase is team trust between these two teams. That's the next step. Now I want to jump back to the beginning. I'm at the last slide in the slide.
Okay, hold on, we're trying to find your slide.
Well, I'm way back at the next to last slide, because I think, and I thought about I will in the future bring this slide up to the front, because the rubber band concept doesn't work unless the tactical role and the strategic role can get their head wrapped around this concept. And when I was 33 years old, I went from Graham ISD, small community, everybody looked a lot alike, I'll just say it that way. And I went to Crowley ISD, South Fort Worth, very diverse, growing 1,500 kids a year, and from all over the world, like people moving from all over the world. But yet we had been the same thing for 50 years, and then we went from 500 students to 15,000 students in 15 years. Right? Like just forget all the old rules. So in that context, we were seeing evidence of intolerance just from a sociological standpoint. Does that make sense? So we were trying to get to tolerance. But then at the same time, we were trying to say tolerance isn't enough. Sometimes we get to tolerance because we've been experiencing intolerance, and so we think tolerance is good. Tolerance is okay. It's not good. It's okay. I would argue acceptance is good, and appreciation is actually the target. And you can't jump from the bottom of that to the top part of that. It just, I don't like that, but it works in that.
Stages.
It's in those stages, that's right. So we were really leaning into, we were looking for a good model for this, and then it hit all of us that the same framework that is oftentimes used, with just sociological change actually lines up with what we're trying to say, break the old paradigm between the cabinet and the board. I'm going to just start using plain language now and not all these fancy words. Okay, and because what we're seeing all over the state, there are 5 consultants tonight doing this training, from Amarillo to, we're all over. And the one thing that's the same is in all of those and the 200 we worked with in the last 48 months, the board wants the superintendent to fix the cabinet. I'm not saying this is here. I'm just saying this is very consistent. The board wants the superintendent to fix the cabinet, and the cabinet wants the superintendent to fix the board. I'm just saying, as a general rule of thumb, just speaking frankly, that's what's going on. But yet we're trying to say, let's develop a performance management system, but the paradigm that we've been operating in has to change. That's what we're saying. We can't go at performance management with the same tool set that we've had in the past. And we can sugarcoat it and learn a bunch of fancy words, but if we really want, let me just say this way. This clicker doesn't work. It works, but it doesn't show up. So, am I messing everything up if I come up here? Okay. So, for the last year, we've been going here. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
We've been moving our way through this journey. So just to be clear, you're at the end of the beginning. Just want to be real, sometimes it feels like the scorecard is done. Okay, congratulations, we are now ready to start. Because then, now we're moving over. And we do strategic plans, and so I'm kind of bad-mouthing my own people, but anybody can develop a strategic plan. Anybody can. You can Google it and use AI and have one done by Tuesday. Next Tuesday we can have it. Now, we try to be real intentional about listening and, looking and comparing to previous data and all of that. The journey is over to the right. Are we going to, and by the way, those that are in the box over there, I'm not saying is what you need to do. I'm just saying these are best practices we are seeing statewide for boards and tactical teams. They're implementing these things, and that's the collective with all of our consultants out there. These are the best practices. Does that make sense? And by the way, we're on the way here. I was on a Zoom, which is probably not good for me to tell on myself, but I was on a Zoom, and two things that was agreed upon by our team are being added to that box on the right. And one is alignment of superintendent appraisal to the scorecard. Right, and we've already talked about that here. And so I weighed in that's where I'm heading right now. We've already talked about it in Judson, so they would agree. And then the other one is cascading scorecards. And so what that means is, this year we're working on getting the district scorecard what is the word the commissioner likes to say, stood up?
Oh,
Yeah, he always says stood up. So we're gonna get the district scorecard stood up. We're gonna get it operational, and then I'm pointing back to my campus. Campus, well, they're smart. They're calling, they're back to the campus. But so the cascaded scorecard concept is there's so much understanding about the district actions and the district measures that then the principal has the opportunity to list out their key strategic actions that line up with the district actions and line up with the district measures. But they have the autonomy to say, you know what's her campus?
Kirby.
Kirby, you know, this language makes more sense to our staff. So that's the cascaded scorecard. But you have to get the district scorecard stood up first before you can, but those two terms will be added.
Could you remind us
Yes,
of
ma'am.
the strategic,
Um,
those levels and where we fit in as a board?
Yes, ma'am.
Just for everyone that's here.
Thank you. So I would, the simple answer is the board is the strategic, the administrators are the tactical, and your frontline employees are operational. I would argue right now, your upper tactical team is part of the strategic team oftentimes. Does that make, like they're often, like congratulations, if you have a seat right there, you're on the strategic team, you know, it ain't all it's cracked up to be, right? I've been there in every one of those seats. But, so there's almost like this, and that's a good question, if I can stay there for a little bit. So it's almost like this is, I'm gonna use the term upper tactical, but then they have, no, I'm not, because I don't like lower tactical, but yeah, but they're the one closest to the strategic. There's how many?
Tier 1, Tier 2.
Thank you. Tier 1 tactical and Tier 2, because there's 100 other administrators. Okay, I'm just ballparking. Okay, see, Tier 2, and see, what we like to say about Tier 2 is that strategy dies at Tier 2. Like if it doesn't penetrate Tier 2 tactical, it's over, game over. And so teachers are critical, principals are pivotal. Does that make sense? Like it pivots on the campus administrator. So there has to be time this year, this coming year, once the scorecard is adopted, to build capacity in your Tier 2 tactical team, which y'all probably already started, but it's like just for them to,
They're subject matter experts.
Yeah, because ultimately, if they don't say, oh, I get what we're saying here, oh, I get, then they don't get that, then it just kind of stops right there.
Is it supposed to die there? Because die sounds kind of.
No, I'm making it harsh. Thank you for
It's
clarifying.
it's
It's supposed to live
supposed to
all
live
the way to the front
So we
line.
don't want it to die.
We do not want it to die.
So what kills it then?
Teachers closing their door and rolling their eyes and saying, I'm going to teach whatever I want to teach because that's crazy, or principals saying, yes, sir, Mr. Superintendent, I'm on it, and just driving back. I'm like, that's crazy, and I'm just going to go do what I'm going to do, and we'll do the best we can. And that's actually more common than uncommon, unfortunately. This model of performance management is trying to not let it die. That's my point. And it's even how do we keep it alive? Now I'm going to give an example here, boardwalks, and we've got superintendents all over this state right now not liking that we have this on here. I'm not saying you need to do this, but we're seeing a lot of success where Dr. Saunders gave me an example of a curriculum that y'all might talk about at the board. So just any...
Eureka.
Okay, thank you. So y'all are talking about Eureka. Y'all hear the word Eureka. So we're taking a less than a quorum of board members that are interested, and or y'all are going to do it 2 by 2 by 2 by 1, or 2 by 2 by 3, I guess, to go look at what Eureka looks like in action. But it's not willy-nilly. It's like we're going to go see it with a teacher that started it last week, and we're going to go see a teacher that started it 6 months ago, and we're going to go, and I'm just messing with Eureka because you threw out the word.
Yep.
But it's just to go put eyes on so that when we're in strategic roundtables, which we're about to talk about next, we have a framework and a picture in our mind of what Eureka is because it's going to be talked about.
How often should we do that?
That is up to you. Let me go to strategic roundtables and then I want to.
I was gonna say, are we gonna go through each one of these?
Yeah, so let me,
Okay.
there's a slide on each one of them, so you have information.
No, I think it's a great time for us to talk about
Okay,
this.
but I'm
We
gonna-
have this, how are we gonna execute it? That's, you know, my big question I walked in with is, okay, we did all this work for over a year. These are some amazing ways to execute it, like, let's get going.
Yeah, so I know if.
We're ready to have that conversation.
Yeah, so that's perfect. Y'all have, I'm gonna go through without clicking through slides, but you have slides as I progress. Is that fair enough? Because I don't wanna get stuck and be on one. So community advisory committees, and you probably already have various committees that are established. Like I'll just use my last superintendent's experience. So we had a bond oversight committee, and then we had a bond planning committee, and then I can't remember, luckily I'm starting to forget some of those, that's good, that's good. But there were at least 4 different, so instead of having those efforts they felt like they kind of took place in isolation, we rolled them all into one community advisory that had a scorecard component, had a bond oversight component, and had a bond planning component. So every time we met, and in my last superintendency, we were going to meet monthly in year 1 and then move to quarterly, or actually 3 times a year when we felt like they had enough information, and 11 years later, we were still meeting monthly. So every quarter, I would say, y'all ready for quarterly meetings? Let's start it in 3 months. And I was fine with that. So on the Tuesday after the board meeting Tuesday, whatever we would report to the board on the scorecard, that a week after that, we would have the community advisory come in for an hour, and we would run through that scorecard report. And then while we had them in the room, so the same scorecard report that the board heard, we went through with them around a table. And I know people said, well, they can go to the board meeting if they want to, and they can hear the report. And that is true. And some would do both. They would go hear it from the board. But we were asking for feedback at the advisory. Like we were asking, okay, what are strengths of what you're hearing right now? What are opportunities for improvement? And then what's something that's still unclear? So we were just starting this loop of community members feeling like they knew what was in that scorecard.
Because I think this is an area where we have a bunch of those, but we just haven't refined them yet, right? In terms of membership, purpose, alignment, right? Like I see what, like NEISD, like they put together their whatever long-term facilities person, and they decided who they needed on it, right? So like every board member picked one community member, one parent, and then they picked like a staff member. I don't know. There was a very strict how they made sure that all stakeholders were represented, all areas of their district were represented, and had a very specific purpose, a very specific deliverable. It was nested in their scorecard. I feel like if we can do that with all of our committees, like growth and planning, right? Who's on growth and planning? What's their mission? What's their purpose? Define what that is and what they're doing.
And for today, like what and I'm happy to work on the nuts and bolts of what it looks like. I mean, today, these are conceptual, high level, and I would probably bet in.
Global is the word
in your
we use.
Global, but in your, is your priority 3,
It's priority 4.
What
Was it 3 or 4? Was it yours?
Okay, that's, so see, committees and two-way communication, so I'm making an assumption here, but I would bet what we're talking about there, that's where that's going to live, right? Like whatever actions, whatever tactical actions we're taking towards that, they're gonna live in that part of the scorecard.
But what I just heard you say, and I'm making sure that I heard it, was that maybe just one community outreach committee could absorb all of these, and then we have bullet points, instead of having all of these
We
different.
wanted these highly engaged community members to have a high level understanding of all these things, not like a narrow.
Right, so each committee would now become an agenda item for this global.
That's correct.
Community committee.
And the initial thinking there was, and I'm just going to tell you, when I got to my last district and I said, hey, I want to do a community meeting, it was just funny. The first response was, when's the bond? I was like, yes, we're going to have one. We're growing, but that's
But that's
no.
not why I'm doing
That's
it.
it, yeah, and I had to I had to actually overcome that the only reason we would have a meeting, and I wanted community members to just understand what we were trying to accomplish better. Then yes, does that help?
That's awesome, I love that.
Yeah.
But do you do it per campus, per district?
We just, it's kind of like something was said earlier, that campuses, actually we wound up with their, I can't remember, and I think I'm pointing the right direction. Were we PTO? I know we want PTA because I couldn't even say that, but whatever we were, the PTO president was automatically on it, if that makes sense. And then we had community, we had chamber, Northeast Partnership.
That was the inception of our own growth and planning committee back in 2016. That's when you got on, because we asked certain principals and board members to give us 2 names. We went and sought those people out. We used to sit around in growth and planning, if you guys can remember back, with 60 people in the room. I remember having it in the gym over at Judson Middle at one time. So it's not like this is something new to us. That's how
the
it
performance
started.
management piece of it is that we are giving a scorecard update. The primary purpose of this community advisory is to understand what we're trying to do as a district.
And that's what we used to do. We would, matter of fact, that's how we came up with the 2016 bond, and then we had the
No.
20. But what I'm
It's
saying
the-
is,
It's your academic performance, your staff, it's the things.
no,
that
I'm
are
talking
on-
about when Ms. Ryan was speaking to the growth and planning committee when we were talking about the bond oversight and all of that.
I'm on
I think
the-
he's saying one
Looking-
overarching, essentially a scorecard committee that's open to everybody.
We could,
And then but that's not the same as like bond oversight, which is a bunch of elected
I-
officials, not the same as growth and planning, maybe?
Well, it was wonky at the beginning, but it became one thing. I'm just going to tell you, like when we cobbled it all together,
I love it.
yeah, it became like one.
How do you not have disproportionate representation then, right? Like, because we seek to try and get as many people from all over our entire district, but it doesn't, depending on what the topic of the day is, the people who show up are not necessarily representative of our entire district. We may have
We had-
tons of people from one area show up and not a lot of people from another, so when we're talking about
We
things,
had
so when it comes
standing, we had
to
a
voting
good-
and presenting stuff to us, like our growth and planning, the goal was there, that committee vote on things, and there is a
Okay,
recommendation
if you're
that
going to
comes
do
to
a
us.
vote and a recommendation off of that, you're going to have to create a subcommittee off of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that has very
Yes.
specific
Yes.
members.
Yes.
Like a
Okay.
task force
Like
kind
a
of thing.
task force.
An ad
That's
hoc, like,
correct. An ad
NEIS
hoc,
needed their
right.
long-term facility planning,
Correct.
that was the name of it, it had a very directed purpose. So at what point do we, because I mean, obviously we can talk about this stuff all night, at what point do we sit and figure out what our community advisory and what we need as a district and what that representation
Well,
looks like?
so-
Is that
I'd
tonight?
rather
Is that
be able,
another meeting?
I'd rather be able.
Yes, it is, another meeting.
Okay, I'm trying to,
I'll tell
can
you
we
what it's
write that
called.
down on our to-do
No,
list, and then we need to
it's one of-
schedule that?
It's one of the, it's coming up.
And
Okay.
Dr. Gibson, I wanted to say something before Ms. Ryan had mentioned, that was the weakness of growth and planning, and getting recommendations from the northern end of the district that didn't include the southern part.
Right.
So there is definitely some benefit to following some models that then incorporate a diverse group of people from the entire community. But what I was going to say is it takes leadership like Dr. Fields to really bring this out, because I've had 4 superintendents I've worked with. Not all of them really want community engagement. They have their agenda, and I hate to say that, but there's administrations of the past that had their own game plan, right? They were not going to listen to employee input. We're seeking employee input, community input, and this current board, as well as the current administration, has been very responsive to getting more input from our community, which then, our evolution of things
Yes.
means we're going to be leading this direction, which will be helpful to include all the aspects of our community. So I just want to say, sometimes it's about timing, right? Timing is now for us to start with this type of process, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, this has probably, and thank you, Mr. Mercer, this has probably always been a good idea, but with the advent of social media, in the absence a counter message, or not even a counter message, in the absence of a message, we're just gonna make it up and put it on social media, and if it's on there enough, it becomes the truth, right? So, and I'm just gonna, again, I'm trying to just speak freely here, and I think I may have said this to y'all before, but, you know, something would pop up on social media, and, you know, one of our staff members like texting me, screenshot, I'm gonna jump all over it, and like, wait, you know, what is the commercial? Hold. I felt like hold. And after time, somebody from the community advisory would get on it and say, totally false. Here's a link on the website that's completely contradictory to what you're saying. And by the way, we have a community advisory committee in 2 months on this date. You're welcome to attend. I mean, do you see it? And then, okay. It just feels good when someone from the community is the one that corrects the community, if that makes sense. Now, every once in a while, there was something we felt like we had to, you know, respond to.
And just a quick question. One of the biggest criticisms I've heard from employees in the past is the selection of employee committees, that they're hand-picked rather than getting people in general.
Right.
So naturally, that's management. I expect management to get input from the employees, but if you have recommendations on how to diversify employee committees, I'd be open to hear
Yeah,
that.
to
The
the,
lottery.
well, and I mean, the technical term, and it doesn't mean it's easy, but you do want to try to get a stratified random sampling, like at the very least. So stratified just means, if, for example, we had a staff advisory committee in my last district, but we also had a teacher advisory. And at first it was just staff advisory, but it was so loaded up with teachers that the custodians that were on it were just steamrolled, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's just, so we bifurcated teacher advisory and staff advisory.
But that happens with parents too, because we have
Yes.
so many staff members that are parents, that you roll into a parent thing, and there'll be 10 parents that are all staff members,
Right.
right, who all work for the district, and one that does not, so the parent voice gets watered down with the parent only, parent staff, and
Right.
stuff like that. So
Well,
I'm
and
hearing
it-
we're gonna hear on an agenda then, is that, I
making
like
notes.
action plans, right? That very quickly, we're gonna review all of these,
Well,
decide on membership, and.
I mean, you all do,
move
I'm
forward.
just the guy
Okay.
talking, and I'm gonna get in the car and drive home. But, I mean, y'all do whatever you want to. I'm just trying to give you some broad, you're at the point to tonight is to go through the scorecard, right?
What was adopted this?
What was adopted, which is the left-hand side of this. And all I'm trying to say is that there's a whole world after that adoption. That's the most important thing. And if I had to pick one off of that list to talk about, and I didn't do a good job, and tomorrow it's going to the top of the chart, are the strategic roundtables, because this was hitting on the earlier conversation. At the very least, and I'll talk about all the rest of them as much as you want to. The strategic roundtable is this is the place to start in my thinking. And we've talked a little bit about this before, but I really want to double down on it. At the very least, you need an October BOY, and I'm going to call it BOY/EOY because last year's EOY becomes this year's BOY in many cases. So you need an October, and then you need a February MOY, middle of the year workshop, and then you need a summer, end of year EOY workshop. And the best practice that we are seeing, and I'll say this on camera, and I don't do, is every one of your meetings on camera? And if it is, that's fine. That's okay. All right, that's good. So some districts will choose to invite the community to them and not put them on camera. And I'm just going to say the rationale behind that, because I'm not telling you to do it or not do it. The thinking is and the commitment is when we're doing a strategic roundtable, there's not one other item on the agenda, not one. It is a 3-hour commitment. If you choose to make it 3 hours, most people are settling on 3 hours, where it is one topic, and the topic is the scorecard. Nothing else. But we're gonna go through the scorecard, and I'm not gonna pick you because you live all over the scorecard, is that right? So you're gonna weigh in, like you have pieces of it, like, is that fair? But like if we're in priority one, you're gonna get a lot of airtime. So here's your subject matter expert, and then one of them's gonna say, oh, Dr. Saunders, tell them about that other thing too. I mean, you see, but you get the strategic team has your tactical subject matter experts taking you through line by line. And at the October one, y'all are just saying we set the 4-year target at this, and we hit it or we didn't hit it, right? We hit last year's or we didn't hit last year's, but we're a half a point off. These conversations at first will be a lot of words because you're describing the key strategic actions, but over time they should become less verbal and more quantifiable. Does that make sense?
And I think isn't that what we thought this meeting was today? Because like when we went over the paper, we've gone over a couple of academic things the last 2 meetings, and everyone's like, stop talking, move on. We're gonna do this in February. So this is not our roundtable.
It is the meeting to set up the concept of roundtables.
Okay.
Because
We've
there's,
already scheduled that as part of the scorecard.
okay, because the way you're set up right now is the best non-example of how to set the room up for this meeting. So thank y'all for setting it, like, this is not the way the room
It's not a
needs to-
round table, it
It
is
is not a round table, this is.
It was due to
I-
the
no,
the
no, no,
location,
I-
but when we came in here, we were like, this will never happen.
Okay, but you,
It looks like us versus them, and that is not what this
that's
is
it,
about.
okay, that is the feel, right? Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't help but feel that way, and so we're saying, and I'm not saying round, y'all know what, but I'm
Yeah,
saying.
we do our square.
Do your square, that's right, y'all been in that square, and like literally sit, just boy, girl, that's right, I think we've talked about that, like just sit, because, and I know in the military, if I understand this correctly, and we've talked about this, this is called a no-rank meeting, and so you're basically having a no-rank meeting, like and that's the only reason I'm saying turn the cameras off, and if you cannot turn the cameras off, don't turn the cameras off, I get it, because if you've committed to all workshops being on it, but,
It's basically a board decision.
right, well, okay, and
I
that,
think it's the commitment to the community.
yeah, and so what,
Would be the hard part.
But what I hear him saying
Yeah,
is,
agreed.
if it's a roundtable and we're asking community to be involved, we want them to be here.
you can let them come sit in the
Right.
audience and hear. It's still a board meeting. I think you said this earlier. A board meeting is a meeting of the board in the public, not a public meeting. But I also know that there's some boards right now that will run through priority one, and the roundtable discussion will end, and then they'll turn and say, are there any audience questions?
So it's like a public hearing.
Well,
too.
Yeah.
you may have to
Like a
technically,
mixture.
I'm not a lawyer, but you may have to post it as a public hearing just because you're going to turn to the community and you're going to say, oh, are there any questions?
We'll talk to the.
Yeah, I'm
leaders
saying
and
talk to
Figure
the-
out how we want it to work.
That's right.
So I guess I'm confused, all right, maybe, we've been doing this for 17 months, so we made a scorecard like 5 months ago, right? When was that, like last
We adopted the
October?
scorecard.
Like 5 months ago, okay.
October
So-
9th.
So I'm trying to figure out, when do we come up with this execution plan of how we're gonna execute? I mean, you're doing the scorecard, don't get me wrong, no. How from the strategic execution, are we doing committees, are we doing, where's the performance management? When is that gonna come out?
Okay.
I guess I'm trying to figure out
I
where we are in
think
that
what I'm
timeline.
hearing is, Madam President, from the trustees, that we're going to get a scorecard report right now, like kind of a baseline. I mean, that's what that is. I'm asking you all to consider, and I'm happy to be part of the conversation, you need to think about that's right, you've got to monitor your performance monitoring system. And you need to decide, what all are we doing, and then when are we going to do it? That's the main point I wanted to say. So if you're going to do strategic roundtables, I'm recommending October, February, and July.
We've already got them scheduled.
Okay.
As part of it.
So then I would recommend tactical team members to work with the board on building out, when do you want to do what?
One, I think it's our strategic execution plan, so we have to say, hey, do we want to do boardwalks? Do we want to do
Or you have to talk to
some of these other things?
you need to have a roundtable about
To talk
performance
about all those
management.
different
Yeah,
things.
like
Okay.
what's
So
doable.
that we
and-
can give them some feedback on what we would like to see, and then they can go.
Yeah,
work
and
on
and
scheduling
I'm
what that
hearing a
looks like.
little bit of energy, like, let's do all of this and 4 more. And what I'm saying is pick 2 or 3 to start,
Yeah.
right? Which you've
But
already,
it
Like
should
we've
be a
done a
back
board
and
walk.
forth conversation, not just us deciding.
correct. Y'all should be in a
Or the
strategic,
15, yeah.
you should be in a strategic roundtable format to build your performance management calendar for 25, 26.
And Dr. Gibson, just for some clarity, the board doesn't lead this, right? This is not the board.
Well, it involves a quorum of the board being, no, sir, they do not. But this team needs to know what the calendar is.
We've got a calendar.
Right.
We're just
For
trying.
this stuff?
Well, for
This is a
performance management,
strategy
you have,
execution. If we go
We
back.
have a
These are our
roundtable
actions.
already scheduled that she's put together as part of her responsibility of the scorecard. But there are a litany of things on the scorecard that we want to talk about.
okay, but let me, just to be clear, and sorry, I may have cut you off. I'm recommending that the strategic and the tactical team have a collective performance management calendar that is called performance management calendar, which may include strategies that are already underway in the scorecard. Does that make sense? Like,
It makes perfect sense, and we're saying we have a recommendation for that here.
okay. And
Good, then
We
we'll
don't-
look at, we
I
can
don't
look
think
at
we
it and
have that.
discuss it.
Do we have that?
They're gonna present it.
For tonight?
I don't,
I don't
You
know.
hand
if
us- I
don't know that
we're
we'll
gonna
have
get that
time tonight.
Granular tonight.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to just quickly.
We are developing a calendar that has very similar columns to the calendar that you have up there on the board, or on the screen. And so we've already kind of penciled in some things just based on what we typically do in board meetings with superintendent reports. We have a column that is like, what is just memo information? What do we send weekly? And quick reports, like what do we send
Right.
weekly? When do we do our roundtables? We have kind of penciled in for a calendar year 3, one being in October, just like you
Okay,
said.
great.
One being around this time of year, one being towards the end of the year. And so we have something developed. So I am hearing that we need to just pencil in some of the other.
Well, have a conversation about
some of
those, that's right.
things
And
that we agree need to be on here.
right, that's great. If it's all right with both teams, one thing I might recommend, because I would note that these things, or those things, some of those things are performance management driven, and some of them are compliance driven. Like that list you were just going through, a couple of them I heard are compliant, like you have to have those. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Okay, so like, would that help you all to know, we have to have
We
that
have
one?
to have that on there.
We choose to have,
The others.
we choose to have this, I can tell you performance management is the technical term. Y'all may want to call it something else, but that is the technical term.
one of these almost want it to feel more collaborative, right? Like, when they sit together and come up with this list and then hand it to us and be like, here, approve this, right? That doesn't feel collaborative, right? Collaboration is discussions, like everybody's sitting down and writing down notes and we're drawing
Right.
on dry erase boards and it's collaborative. Now, obviously, they work 85 hours a week, so they have time to come up with drafts of things. But I think, I know some of my frustration is making it feel more like conversations of adults and talking through things where everyone can see different perspectives. And nothing's pre-decided. Everything is decided when the group talks to each other and we hear lots of perspectives. And I think that's something we can improve is at least collaboration and making everything feel very collaborative.
I think we are very open to being collaborative and having collaborative discussions. I think maybe Dr. Gibson were confused about what parts should be a collaborative discussion and what parts are actually the work of this team.
Yeah, the thought I was just having is, do you all have you have a regular board meeting every month?
Yes.
Okay, do you have a workshop
No.
every month?
Are these items on this chart, are these all under the heading of board involvement They're not,
Yes, strategic execution.
they're all strategic,
performance
and they're
management.
not, none of them are the compliance
This is all the
thing.
strategic stuff.
Correct, that's, it's the board, it's two things, I just heard both of them. It's the board is involved, and it's not compliance. All of those
All
well
of them.
exceed the statute.
And that's why I've asked, are we leading this? Are we just being part of the discussion?
Call me Pollyanna, but it should be a group decision between these two teams.
I would make it easier for you. We did have a system that I think you even walked on, where we used to invite the board members for boardwalks.
We did that
We
once,
did
and it was
one.
awesome, and I really wish we would do it again.
That's
So we
great.
did have a policy where we had the board show up for board walks. And it was one
So what
time.
month does it happen again?
Exactly. But
Okay.
what I'm trying to get at is, they're not gonna schedule that. We are.
Well,
We can't have the board saying, hey, we're gonna do our board walk, and you guys need to
no,
show up and
the
do that
nuts
on
and
Tuesday."
bolts of it, the tactical team has to pull the nuts and
And
bolts
that's
of
what
it.
Right,
we're
what we're
trying to get at.
collaborating on is, hey,
What-
we should do boardwalks,
what
let's do
month?
them every other month, right? That's the
Right.
higher level, like
We are
how
open to
often,
that.
and
We are
then
open to that.
tactical team executes
Correct.
when they're gonna be,
And
right?
and maybe at a roundtable developing this, a trustee says, I would really like to do that in April, and then Dr. Saunders goes, not April, you know, but,
Just-
Well,
right.
they align them, they have to be
Yeah.
aligned, like, hey, in, October, we're gonna go do like a 1.2 or whatever walk, and we're gonna go to the high schools and look at CCMR stuff, right? Whatever we fill out on here, we wanna tie it, we wanna agree to tie it to some specific
scorecard.
purpose on the scorecard.
Correct.
And
we're
then
saying-
you figure out when.
And we're saying we're open to that. But what we're getting from at least one board member is that we are the ones who drive that. No, we are. We'll let you know, and we put it together. We'll even make a schedule for the entire year. All we need to know is the feedback from you on what you would like us to move out on.
Right. And that's
Yeah,
a
that's
collaborative
the
effort.
conversation that we wanna have is
So-
what things we should do.
So what I'm hearing is maybe should we be looking, Dr. Gibson, at some type of mini strategic roundtable every month as a board workshop to start building this kind of stuff?
Maybe.
Is this what?
It may
what you're
take that.
leading at?
Because
Right
you-
now,
Till we
not,
get better.
Just
right.
initially, right, because if not, it may take so long.
And then we
to-
can do a bite of the apple at each one, instead of trying to spend 8 hours on a Saturday
God, yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
cram everything in.
I would like you to reiterate, though, that we don't need this open litany of a bunch of different things.
No, it would be
Instead, start
focused
off with
on.
like one or two.
It would be, it would be a
Yeah.
strategic, a roundtable discussion on this topic,
Oh.
scheduling this.
Like the monitoring
Oh,
calendar we
right.
had, right? Where we're talking about specifically, like, constraint progress measure 1.3 or something would be March. We used to have a calendar like
This
that.
might be wrong, but the picture I have in my mind initially is you're getting, if you're going, I don't think it's unrealistic to think once a month, if everybody can do that.
We love once a month. What
Right.
I'm saying
Yeah.
is when we come together once a month, we're not naming 5 different things that.
No. It'd be a
No.
focus on one thing.
Right.
The next piece that we're moving forward.
So
The
there's-
next, then we've got that one. Now what's the next piece that we do? And that's a schedule that we have to work on.
Correct.
Correct.
And strategic roundtable, that says 3 times annual. You're
Right.
just gonna say monthly, and then it's gonna say, in March, we're doing priority 1, and April, we're doing priority 2, and I'm right, like y'all are gonna.
Kind of like that, right.
Whatever the pattern is that y'all all collectively agree to.
And then
Which
the-
they have to tell us because it depends on when the data's available, right?
But also then, there would be the 3 to specifically discuss BOI, MOI, EOR. That would be the focus
Right.
of those.
You're ultimately working towards that, I
Okay.
think, eventually, that we just.
So that would be a
Yeah, we
part
can
of,
do big,
okay.
yeah.
Right, we're trying to build towards the BOY, MOY, EOY, but it may take more than that
Right,
at
we might have
first.
to do just elementary, right, one,
Yeah,
until we can do
so
everything in a
here,
3-hour
So-
stint.
I'm hearing that, there's some things that are already underway, and that's all great. All I'm recommending is that the tactical team and the strategic team, not all, but what I'm primarily recommending is the strategic team and the tactical team have a performance management plan that they have collectively
Right.
created.
Yes.
Correct.
That's all I'm saying.
And that's kind of where I'm headed with, that's what those mini roundtables could be,
You're
is
correct.
getting us to that.
Correct.
Could we combine those with existing, or should they be exclusive for just that? Meaning, we've got budget meetings, a
Well-
bunch of stuff coming up.
Are y'all July 1?
Yeah.
Are you, okay, so it's budget time. Well, 2 hours performance management, 2 hours budget, but like, it's gonna be like clear,
Or
Take a-
grievance, tacking them.
take a break. Well, yeah, I'm like, if those are the big rocks, then keep those the big rocks and tack things on at the end only if absolutely no other way
Yeah.
to.
If there's if it's time bound
Yeah,
and.
time bound and
yeah.
there's no other way to
No
do
other-
it.
No other time to do it.
We would during budget season do a scorecard conversation for 2 hours, take a quick break, everybody back in, it's budget workshop time,
But
right?
are we
Like-
supposed to be doing all of those things?
No,
Or we-
ma'am.
No, we're
I'm
starting.
We're
just-
gonna
We're just
decide
gonna-
which ones we wanna do
That's right.
together collaboratively, right?
Right.
And
We're gonna
schedule
decide
them.
as a team.
This is the golden corral of
Yep.
performance management. It's the whole buffet. You just pick, the round tables, yes. Now, you all have already, it's what was already said, you're committed to team trust and governance check-ins. Y'all have good governance handbook on the agenda today. That's a good governance check-in. I'm gonna give you an example. I would put under that column of team trust and good governance check-in, the month that you're gonna take team trust again.
Okay.
Like, take it every year.
And quarterly self-evaluation.
Quarterly
and all other
self-evaluation,
things,
whatever,
That
a
needs to
good,
go on here
good
for
governance handbook review. Like, is it still functional? Is it still working? See that, it's not just like an X on that far right column. It's,
How
A
and
discussion.
when are we going to
And how
talk
are we gonna
about
do
these
it?
things that keep this machine oiled and going? I want to over-talk it. I may have already, but I'll just
I
stop.
think you went through 8 minutes, sir.
In my defense, there were questions that
No,
started.
no, no, no.
No, I think this is a lot of clarity. This is good.
It's hard because we are trying to establish new habits.
Yeah.
Hardest thing on earth to
Systems
do.
and processes too.
Hardest thing. So that means, I just heard, teachers moving cheese, right? So we're kind of moving the board cheese because we're saying we may have to like stop the way we've done it to build a new system. And it's hard. We just need to acknowledge that. Okay, Dr. Fields, I'm going to do a check-in with you and the president. Where would you all like this to progress?
I'd
Scorecard?
like to go to good governance.
Good
if you don't
governance,
mind,
because that's
we've
kind of the
got
natural
somebody
segue,
here
and we
with
have our
us.
attorney here to make
Okay.
sure we're doing everything legally, and don't want to keep her any longer, because she wants to go home for dinner. So,
Are we coming back to Dr. Wilson? Are we taking, okay.
We're gonna come back.
we're going to come back to the strategic roundtable discussion. This is kind of filling in. So, we've had discussion at board meetings about this isn't working well, this isn't working well, and we've talked a number of times about making sure that we revisit our good governance handbook to make sure that we're all in agreement about how we as a board should be operating. And this isn't the staff, this is us as a board. This is our document that says this is how we handle ourselves. And I've had people reach out to me about certain things, and I made a couple of notes for myself about what maybe we might want to talk about. One of the issues has been how late our meetings go, and that consistently one voice is heard consistently. And so one of the suggestions that came was that we should maybe have a time limit on how long we speak on a particular, on agenda items. And kind of make sure that our focus as board members is actually asking the question, looking specifically at what the agenda topic is and staying on that topic, and then letting others have their voice too. My goal is that we are not just up here pontificating, but that we are actually doing a discussion of what the agenda item is. So my thought was we could have 5-10 minute time limit on speaking on one particular agenda item, and then an opportunity for a rebuttal, of course, the second time around. What say you all?
Would there be a timekeeper?
Yes,
You're saying each person or the entire discussion of the whole
each
agenda
person.
item?
Each person. I don't ever want to shut, anybody down, and if one person speaks 5 minutes or whatever the limit is, then that's not fair to everybody else.
Okay.
But
If they ask
truly help us focus on the agenda item.
So if they ask one question and somehow it turns into like a 10-minute response somehow,
I'm sorry,
Is
who asked
that-
what question?
if not, like a board member asks a question, but all of a sudden it becomes a 10-minute response from 7 other people, does that count? How is the 5 to 10 minutes gonna be counted?
When you
I
start
guess?
talking, the timer goes on. When it's the next person's turn, the timer goes off. And that's how we do it.
When the
We
people
have
go-
one
okay.
person speaking at a time. We don't
Okay,
go back
yeah.
and forth.
No, I know sometimes like I'll
Generally.
ask a question and all of a sudden I'll get like a lot of answers.
Well, I'm gonna be blunt.
From the cabinet, yes.
Sometimes you don't ask a question. Sometimes you just speak for 10 minutes. And there's not really a question
Oh, if
involved
you
in
wanna
it.
send me the,
So-
where I spoke for 10 minutes pontifically, I'd love to hear that. No, sometimes I'll ask a question, it feels like I have a lot of airtime, because I'll ask a question, but then all of a sudden it'll be it'll be a simple question, it'll be a very extended response from the cabinet, and I too wanna go back to much more of the board speaking with each other, right? It doesn't feel like a discussion up there. It doesn't sound like the 7 of us being like, hey, what do you think? Hey, what do you think?
And this is
Listening
what I'm
to each
talking about,
other's-
is it feels like that there is one voice that monopolizes the conversation, and that other people may not have an opportunity to go into what they want to say about it, because there's been the one voice
Oh, I thought you
monopolizing.
normally go down I like when you go down the line, right, and you start at one end, and I like when you start at the opposite end as me.
That's what I'm trying
I love
to
it.
do.
No, I love it when you do that, because I do, I like to hear everyone else's questions, because my questions might not be relevant if someone else asked it, type thing. But, yeah, I think as long as our portion that we are speaking, and I don't want to speak more than 5 or 10 minutes on any one topic of just my voice
Okay,
alone.
great.
And as long as the responses are not counted against us.
No, it's you setting it up, asking the question, doing the discussion. Then there can be the response from other board members, or perhaps it's a question for administration, and then they respond. But it's kind of to keep us focused, because I think sometimes there's a lot of bird walking and talking around rather than sticking straight to the agenda
So
item.
is there a limit of how many 10 minutes we get? Because we could go on and on and on for an
Well,
hour.
currently, our manuals, our good governance manual says you speak once and then you have a second opportunity. And so that's what we would still be looking at.
And both of them are 10 minutes or no?
I don't think the rebuttal would need to be the full time. And, 10 minutes, I think, is a good starting place, and if it looks like we're managing that well, then maybe next time around we tighten it up even
10
more,
minutes
once
per
we get
per-
used to it.
Per person?
That's a whole lot.
Per person of the,
On
yeah, I
each
feel
item-
like that's a
agenda
lot.
item.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so
Like
5
me,
minutes?
I think 5
10
minutes.
minutes of my
Okay.
voice on each agenda
I
item
think
is
5 minutes, but what I would, I would just like a little leeway to where if we feel like this topic deserves a little more time, a little more consideration, that the board be able to say, let's extend this.
Or
I
the
think that-
conversation turns sometimes, all of a sudden it's
I
going
think
somewhere
that that's
else.
a good thing. We could check in and say, is this something that the board is in agreement with, that we allow another another 2 minutes for each person, or whatever it needs to be?
Or if it's
Right.
written, we could take a vote.
Yeah.
That's
Which would be
true.
recorded as a vote.
Right, either
That's true.
consensus, but, yeah. So,
Consensus or vote on to extend the conversation for
okay, so I'm
another-
okay with setting a limit,
Mhm.
as long as we also have that backup of, if we all agree this needs a little more time, that we have that leeway too.
Okay.
I
Okay.
vote for 5 and 3.
5 and 3. So 5 minute on speaking and a 3-minute rebuttal?
Yeah,
Is
we can
that-
start with that.
I think
I
you had
agree.
said 10, I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah, not 10.
Well, if it's 10,
5
that's 70 minutes
Yeah, no.
on each
one
agenda
second.
item
Yeah,
for each of
no.
it. That's
Without rebuttal.
extreme, right.
Yeah.
Without rebuttal, yeah. Or without input.
And
from the
not
cabinet.
necessarily does everybody speak on every item, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that.
Yeah.
But I think people will feel less intimidated if there's not one person saying all the things. This will also allow us all to step up and take responsibility for our part of this discussion too, and not just sit back and listen to one person.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do, is build it more as a community type thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Okay.
when we go all the way down the line and no one's really asked any questions, then it like, all of a sudden, it does feel like I have to ask a few more
Well, I will
questions. No one
say
had asked
that a lot of
anything
us ask the questions before the meeting, which is,
That's what I was gonna
else. Mr. Macias has told us everything should be out in the boardroom and not ahead of time, so like.
clarification questions, I
Yeah.
think, are perfectly acceptable to ask before the meeting.
We would prefer.
All right.
And-
So let's try the 5 minutes. If that's not working, then we can come back, because this is another opportunity for a check-in. and come back and do it. Is that agreeable with the majority of the board?
Yeah, it's a good starting
And
point.
then who's keeping time, just so we know
The board-
how this works?
The board vice president, that will be their duty. Because the president has to run the meeting, the vice president should be timekeeper. I used to do that when I was vice president, timekeeping on public comments.
Only because
so-
I'm like, that's a lot of on and off, so that's gonna
Madam
take a lot of
President,
time.
just a thought, why couldn't we have someone outside the meeting be the timekeeper?
Because this is a board meeting, we shouldn't be tasking people
It needs
to,
to be
to do stuff that
us.
we're doing. It's a board meeting. I'm not gonna ask anybody else to do timekeeping.
To your point, Ms. Canoyer, we
Put it on the
can
screen.
see if we can
Oh,
hook that
yeah,
up
big
to
timer
the
countdown.
technology responsibility, and once you start talking, maybe there's a timer that goes up. So we can see if there's something we can.
Okay.
I think it'll get hard, but like, if I ask a question, and it's a 30-second response, then I ask another, like, it's gonna be on and off at the timer a whole
I
lot.
think she was talking about per,
Oh, well, if I ask a question and the cabinet takes 5 minutes to respond to it, then absolutely not. No, then that's ridiculous. Because then the whole timer would get eaten up the whole time. Because everyone has seen how much they're.
Dr. Gibson, I know you've spoken with people about that. How does it work like that? Can you give us a little bit of guidance on what you've seen in the
Yeah,
districts
this-
you've worked with?
We're having a nuts and bolts conversation,
Right.
and my response is not that. We wanted board meetings, regular business board meetings to not last longer than 2 hours.
Oh, my God.
That'd be a big paradigm shift.
Well, and we had about 30 or 45 minutes.
But you had the second meeting every month, right?
Round
Yeah.
tables, whatever, anybody can knock themselves out for 3 hours.
Yeah, and a lot of the complaints we get is that the number of minutes board members are talking compared to the staff is very disproportionate, and it's been getting worse, so that there's not enough board conversation, and there's too much
if
cabinet
somebody's in
conversation.
indication
I'm not
of how the
getting that.
meetings are
I get
going.
that.
Right, and the,
A lot.
right, so we want board meetings to just be business. When stuff, like Mr. Macias earlier, you said, I would like,
Middle schools.
so, no, I'm not picking on you at all in any way, but that might, if we build this other system, you might say, when would that fit into the next roundtable conversation? And then one of them says, oh, that's probably gonna be, 2 months, and you go, okay, can we add that to the roundtable? Does that make sense?
It
And
makes
it's not-
perfect
Well, and the
And it's
other,
not back on, it's not another item on, because it's in the context of that roundtable, so we're trying to have a little more conversation at the roundtable.
the other thing I think I prefer is that when we submit our agenda items, if it's something that you can address with us, or you need more clarification about what we're asking, a lot of times, when I submit agenda items, I get the answers, and I don't need anything further. That's it, done.
Right, and I don't, so.
Wow, you're
take
lucky,
it
I
off
don't
the
get a phone
agenda.
call ever
Well,
on
the
my
big
agenda.
paradigm shift here is that y'all are used to, and that's okay, I'm not saying it's bad. The only way it gets answered or talked about is if I submit it as an agenda item. Right, in moving forward, it's just, here's a question, where's the best place for this to get an answer? Well, we can give you one answer right now, you can go, okay, I'm satisfied, or you can say, I would like it on the next priority 2 roundtable discussion. I would like to work that into that discussion.
Can I bring something to the attention, the elephant in the room? The backhanded comments, this is what's causing the divide between the group. The backhanded comments made whenever someone is speaking to something, the backhanded comments, oh, it must be nice to get a phone call about your agenda. That is not okay. It's not okay. That's not forming the trust that we need to move forward in this district.
Correct, neither is the eye rolling, the side conversations, and everything else. This
Side
board has
conversations,
gotten
telling the cabinet that they shouldn't be
emails
part
about
of our
mostly related to you.
talking, they're not allowed to
Just saying.
talk. Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
The
we're never
public
gonna
is
move forward.
2,000 views.
Well, so when I hear, like I'm going to this slide now, we just, there's a level of intolerance that's
Exactly.
at play, and we've got to get to tolerance, and we've got to get beyond that to acceptance.
Well, I did have this on, as a note to bring up during this time, and that is the view of the public of the board. And to me, it's not acceptable how the public is seeing us behave in public. We have to do better, in how we present ourselves. There shouldn't be facial, even if we have to put it in our operating procedures, no facial expressions in a negative tone, no eye rolling, no scowling, no
There are
frowning.
people that are putting body language.
Body language is big, I
Because
agree.
everything's filmed and they're putting it in the
Yes.
governance handbook. You should monitor body language.
And they are,
also.
and that is seen, and it is being watched, and I'm not satisfied with the public's view of how we're performing. Plus, we're supposed to set an example to the students of the community. We
Thank you,
are
Ms. Lee.
supposed to be educators, we're setting an example, and we really need to clean up our act.
I think I told you all, every time I left, I would try to run home and cook something, usually wasn't much, but for the kids, and then I'd run back to the board meeting, and Otika every time would say, don't forget, if y'all sneeze on camera, the district gets a cold.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a comment. I've been waiting patiently to say my few words. Mind you, I'm the longest serving trustee on this board. So Mr. Salinas is real close because he was on in the beginning. But the premise of transparency and having open dialogue in the boardroom have always been central to my belief, my core belief. But even I observing this board and the dialogue that's taking place, in my humble opinion, it's gotten long. We've had board members have to leave board meetings early because they can't stay because the meetings are so long. So we certainly need to do something to diminish the length of time. I'll tell you, we've talked about it in the past, kind of, would we have 2 meetings? But then everyone's afraid we'd be there till 11 in both meetings, which makes absolutely no sense. You
You're
have 2
correct.
meetings and you're there till 11 anyway.
Correct.
So, makes no sense. So, bottom line, my concerns are that we would limit board engagement and being transparent with our public. But I think if we try this, we have to do something. I'm going to support the 5 and 3 minutes because I think we need to try something.
Yeah,
We need
just
to get
try.
to the point. I mean, it's not a perfect system. We have the ability to adjust as we
Yeah.
go, but we need to call. In fact, I think there was one instance, for the record, there was a call for the question. Because remember, Robert's Rules of Order
Correct.
allow us to call for the question. I won't vote for it if I feel a colleague has more to say. But now going forward, I would just ask our colleagues, if we have to override, if I'm being a rebel and I want to talk 5 more minutes longer, someone can call for the question, and then all of a sudden the board will say, hey, according to our good governance, we've only given so much time. We don't need to be grandstanding. We need to ask a question, right, and get to the point. I think we can, right? And so I'm confident of that. But I will also say that, again, because I've observed 4 different superintendents, I can tell that what I'm really appreciative of Dr. Fields is that he enables his cabinet to be engaged. I'm hoping that when Dr. Fields is done, our next superintendent is in this room, because we need to promote from within, like we did with Dr. Fields. That builds sustainability. So you're building leadership in your teams. I want to see that. Now, naturally, to Ms. Ryan's point, if the cabinet has a lengthy response, maybe that shouldn't be counted against
Right.
the
Agreed.
board
I agree.
member,
We would
and we
stop.
allow the continuance of questions.
Right.
But it's still only 5 minutes. I think that's great. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that we have those avenues. And then in my district, I reach out to a lot of my stakeholders. I make sure I talk to them about what's happening in the boardroom so that I can kind of talk more beyond the 5 minutes that they heard in the boardroom. So I think I would just, my responsibility as a trustee, have more of those conversations and go into campuses and talk about what has happened, if there are any input they have. But that's my responsibility, right? And I'll be doing that. But I think, Ms. Canoyer, I think it's a good recommendation that we try this because we're there too long. And I've never said that. I've always told everybody, I'll stay there till 1 in the morning. I am committed to this district. But honestly, everyone starts losing their mind
But
about
but then we don't give the topics at the end of the agenda, the
Absolutely.
time and that they deserve, and that's the whole goal of
Right,
this.
right.
And then staff has been here the whole day, plus now the whole night, and we're asking them to come back to work the next
I would
day,
not
and
say
that's
stay
so
till 1 in the
unfair.
morning. No, I'm just saying, but I've been to
But
board meetings that
that's
have
the
been that long.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Mr. Salinas, I know you had said you wanted to say something.
And I'll yield. I'm fine. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I assumed you were finished. My apologies.
Thank you. The board members receive their agendas before the regular board meeting. I believe our secretary does a wonderful job on Tuesday, and it's there. Look at the agenda. If you have any questions, you call the only person we're responsible for, and that is the superintendent. We don't call anybody up because we're not responsible for them. Only the superintendent. And if I have a question, I say, Dr. Field, I need some information, this item that's in the agenda. Would you help me? Well, what's your question? Then you give them the question. Well, you know what? Let me find out. I'll give it to you as soon as I gather the information before the board meeting. That way, when it gets to the board meeting, I don't have to pull anything because I already got the answer. So, to me, that's very,
Can I ask you a
very.
question? Are there people who aren't doing that? Because Dr. Fields knows how many emails he gets from me as soon as that board packet gets published. And I'm like, 5H, and I send my questions. So are there people not doing that?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
I guess I'm just confused on your statement, if there were people that weren't doing it. Because then I think you guys he usually sends a response to everybody, so in case anybody else had a question on 5H, if we get the answer before the board meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
So, okay, all right, I guess I'm just,
So that kind of segues into my next thought, was
I'm
about.
not finished.
Oh, I apologize. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
We don't need that.
so are you proposing
We
to
do not
change?
Let him
need
finish,
that.
please.
Thank you, ma'am.
Did you finish? Do you want to?
Was there something else you wanted to say, Mr. Salinas?
No, that's okay, ma'am.
Okay, making sure that everybody has,
Yes.
right. And so that is one of the things that we say in our governance handbook is that you should, board members request existing information and existing reports to the superintendent or board president. And, yeah, page 12. And there's also, where's the one about before the meeting? Is that page,
6?
board packet? Here we go.
Page 6.
The board shall make every effort, yeah, page 10, reasonable requests for additional information or clarification no later than 72 hours prior to noon the week of a regularly scheduled board meeting. That was unclear to me. Am I the only one? Reasonable requests for additional information no later than 72 hours prior to Monday noon. See,
The
okay.
problem is that we don't get our packets
So here's
necessarily.
what I'm saying. I think it's important that we give staff an opportunity to reply before the day of the board meeting to a question that's submitted by email or by phone call.
Correct.
And my thought was, all of those should be 48 hours before the board meeting. That should be the deadline. Does that make sense? So if you're going to ask a question about the agenda, what's happening at the board meeting, then it should be to the superintendent 48 hours. That means we'll have had our board packet for at least 48 hours. And we usually have the whole weekend to look at
No,
it.
sometimes we haven't though.
That's special meetings, no, I'm talking about regular meetings. But regular meeting, and the only time we don't get it on Friday is if there's been a big event and Betty has not had an opportunity to sit down and input it.
So can we change that so we get that on Fridays for our regular meetings? Because otherwise, if this still stays at 72 and for some reason doesn't drop, then that makes that impossible.
I don't know that we can require that it be on a Friday every single time, because like I said, sometimes there are other things that Betty does as part of her job that keep her from maybe being able to, and let's face it, Betty is a human and sometimes she's sick.
Yeah.
And she's the best human, we love her,
Yeah.
but sometimes she's ill. So I don't want to ding her on something like that. So what I'm saying is Friday, Saturday, I think is appropriate for board packet to come out. So then Monday afternoon would be when questions would be due, so that we have an opportunity for them to answer, but still do their jobs and not just be isolated on Wednesday, Thursday, trying to get everything answered.
Well, I think the hard part is, it's 400 to 600 pages sometimes. When I download the whole agenda packet, I don't sit with 14 questions and be like, ooh, I'm gonna wait till Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's why you get them one by one for me, because it's literally as I'm sitting going through my packet, I literally type it the moment I have a chance to read it. So I hope everybody's doing the best they can to get it to them as soon as possible.
I think that the number of questions that come, the majority are from you.
Oh,
And that's a concern for staff about how the level of question, that's the next part I'm gonna get to, how deep the information you're asking for goes and the time that it takes to respond to your questions. And are we then now breaching that level between tactical and operational, strategic and tactical?
Well, can I give an
So-
example? Like a question I asked was about the roofing contract, right? So I asked about the roofing contract because I went and checked our list of our engineers from the RFQ, and that company they were recommending wasn't on the RFQ. Should I not, is that too deep? Because I know if I approve a contract, it's actually a misdemeanor personally in the education code. There are a lot of things that board members can individually be criminally charged with. So those, when we do things like contracts and other things where I know I can be criminally liable if I vote yes on this, and I'm not saying it happens all the time, but I'm saying I can be in the code. Like, I'm gonna look at contracts, much more closely, and thank goodness I did because the vendor was on it, type thing. So I guess are you saying things like that are inappropriate for a board member to ask?
Yeah, please, jump in, because I know we just lived this.
I would tell you, Ms. Ryan, in reference to the statement that Ms. Faulkner made, it's the comment like you just made. If you feel, and we appreciate, we've gotten better due to your questioning, because the diligence that we have to go through to make sure that everything is aligned is a lot more higher now than it has been in the past. And for that, we thank you. But if you see something that you feel is out of order, the question doesn't have to come in an accusation. It just has to come. And when we look into it, we'll look into it, give you feedback, and go through it. We don't do things illegal. And we would never put the board or ourselves in a situation, because we can be sued individually as well. We would never put ourselves in that situation or in that position.
Well, I guess I just,
Well, what
sometimes
I'm
it's
asking-
blanket stuff like, you don't ask the right kind of questions, but nobody ever gives me examples of wrong kinds of questions.
I didn't
like
say
which
that you
one-
didn't answer.
No, I'm saying, Mr. Neuer said, like, the question, the level, I'm asking at some minuscule level of things.
That's coming, hang on.
What I'm trying to
That's the
get
next
at now
part.
is that, what I'm trying to ask is that if there's a question that you have, we want to hear it. If there's a question that any of you have, we want that. We want it ahead of time so we can give you the information ahead of time, because then that will decrease the amount of time that we have to spend in a board meeting, because you'll have that answer. But what we hear all too often is, well, this is for the sake of the community, and then the question's asked anyway, and we know that we've answered that because we sent it to all of you. We're just saying,
I guess
let's,
when I emailed you, I said, hey, question 5H. I don't see these companies on the
again,
RFQ.
like what you're
Can you
doing right
clarify?
now.
Like,
If
that's
you wanted
the only-
clarification, but no, it was 5I is what you're talking
Or
about.
I don't remember which letter it
You
was.
know it was the one that was pulled, and if you want more clarification on it, then we can call you and give you clarification on it. But that's not what we're doing right now. What we're doing is, I want everyone to know, I pulled something from the agenda. Or no, I asked a question, they pulled it from the agenda, and I'm still asking questions about it.
Well, no, I'm giving it as an example where I emailed you in advance of a meeting because I saw something.
And we.
And I
pulled
got
the
no
agenda
response.
item.
All I saw was, I got no email
We
back, I got
pulled
no
the agenda
phone
item.
call saying, oh, we're pulling it tonight. To answer your question, we're pulling it. Oops. I received no phone call, no email back, and when we got on the dais, it was pulled. So I'm just giving an example of where I asked what I thought was a very innocent strategic question in a very nice way, and I'll go back to the email and
You
read
asked
it,
a question
and I
about
got
it.
no response.
You had a question about an item. We did not feel comfortable with the answer, we pulled it. And it was taken off the agenda and not considered.
But I never got a response as to, like, why.
So the.
Again, my phone
Well,
works if
if
anybody
we
ever
do-
wants to call me.
If we do
That's-
root cause, it took 8 minutes to get to, you never got a call back, that's the issue.
I never
So
get
we
calls.
had, I know, that should have been the first thing you said, is
Yep.
all I'm saying. Like, my issue is that I never got a call back.
And-
And I don't know if she did or she didn't, I'm not saying that, I'm not, you know what I'm saying, I'm just saying,
In the future, if there's an item pulled, and there was a question asked, I will be sure to give you a call. I thought the item was mute because we pulled it The recommendation from the cabinet was, we pulled it from the agenda. If you wanted clarification about why it was pulled from the agenda, all we needed was another phone call, and we would have answered that question for you as well. But we pulled the item.
Right, this is just my global comment. If you do the 5 whys on 95% of the issue, so you all know 5 whys, why. Somewhere but before you get to the 5th why, you get the answer, 95% of the time it's gonna be communication. I just saw a head nod. Out of my bird. Is that fair, what I'm saying? Like,
I think that's like.
so, and so then we get in all the other things, and I'm just making a global comment. Mr. Macias, you remember Mr. Harry, rest his soul. Never seen a board member ask more questions in my whole life. Right, he bought airplane parts to fix these jets that fly over y'all's head. So all the guy did was look at RFPs and RFQs all day long from all over the world. All I know is it can happen without this because we did it. And the guy, and that we would have 15 questions a month, but
And it really comes back to, I'm making a broad statement, the way we want our perception to be on that camera to the world, right? So we've set aside some time with Mr. Herod. I'm not saying you need to do this, and we would get on the phone call and just run through the agenda and just, 3 days ahead, just try to run through them. And I'm just saying, I've lived that, so I'm not just speaking arbitrarily. I've lived that, and there are ways. This is communication increasing, and if everyone in this room is really conscientious about what it looks like on that camera, then you'll get it resolved.
I agree.
That's my broad statement. If the point is that we don't care what it looks like on the camera, then it'll never get resolved. That's all I'm saying.
But I think we have 2 issues going on here. I understand what you're saying about the camera, but in reading some of the questions, I feel that they're questions proposed as a gotcha. I don't think it's even for a level of understanding, because then it's a gotcha. We need the information, we're gonna put it out to the community, probably not in the way that it was presented to us, but turned around, half-truths and I don't know. Because there's in front of the camera and then there's behind the scenes.
Right.
And I think that's part of the issue. And
Well-
I feel for the cabinet, because I know that they cringe every time they get a question.
Right.
Because anything is going to be used against them.
Yeah, the thought, thank you for that clarification. See, I don't know the details to all this. That's kind of maybe the good part. I just roll in here and I don't know all this. I know Mr. Harry got really good at saying, I'm not going to ask you why it's painted red. I'm going to ask you what is our process for determining paint color.
Exactly.
Well, but that's a different question. And what I'm hearing is that y'all are feeling like it's why is it painted red? Why is it painted red?
That's the way the
Okay,
question is
that's the way
framed.
it lands that way.
It feels that way.
It feels that way, that's right. So it's the perception of the receiver of the question. And the why is it painted red versus what is our process for determining paint color, that lands at this table a different way, right? That just lands a different way. And it's like, because what happens is, what is our process for determining paint color, right? You all start, instead of, whoa, guards up, like fear, anxiety, instead of, hey, let's have a good conversation here with your subject matter experts on what that process is. Maybe we do need to tighten something up. And so it's hard to do what we're doing right now because it's the way it feels. Like you just said, it's the way it feels, and it's hard. But if we don't talk about the way it feels, you'll never get out of the bottom of that to the top of that. Well, I need to flip that. Intolerance is at the bottom. Appreciation is at the top.
I have something to say. Again, I'm just patiently waiting for everyone to say their commentary, but naturally, again, just thinking back my history, when we talk about board meetings and questions, I've always asked the questions. but I feel like I've done it in a professional way that's courteous to administration. Even if I felt maybe I didn't agree with them, I don't condemn, because I don't know what the motives are, and I take that, and I learn more about the topic. And this is 15 years worth of being a board member. So I would just say, Ms. Ryan, somewhere they're feeling like you're attacking them. And you may not be. You're asking some generally good questions. But the bottom line is, we're all a team, right? No one on this other side of the room, I believe, is trying to undermine our district or cause it any harm or put us in a liability. And I trust that. So I would say this too. If there's an agenda item, you know how you talk a lot about flying the plane or building it as you're flying it?
Yes, sir.
If Betty Holmes could always upload the documents as they come in with an expectation that are completely uploaded by Saturday. That way portions of the agenda are already coming in so that we can look and maybe ask some questions. It's just a recommendation. We can expect that it's not fully loaded until Saturday when it's fully loaded. And then the other thing that I implore upon administration.
Do you mind if I answer something while you said, because it's right on my mind?
Go ahead.
Please don't forget what you're going to say.
I'm going to say something, but go ahead.
We do the agenda review with you guys, and oftentimes we put stuff on the agenda with the hopes that we'll have stuff done by a particular time, but sometimes that comes in late. I want to assure you that we'll have the agenda and the supporting documents up by the Friday. But that may mean taking some more things off the agenda because we didn't get it.
That makes sense, though.
So I just wanted to make that clarification before we move on. Please remember what you were.
Yeah, no, I do. And thank you for that feedback. The other thing is this. We're all human, right? And so we have 72 hours to review the agenda. If by some chance you get an email on Monday, I mean, it's already pretty close, but, and you don't have enough time to answer the question, do not stop your workload. It's simply going to come up in the board meeting because you will have to ask, and you'll say, ma'am, or sir, we didn't have time to compile all the information. We'll have to kick this to Friday notes or to another agenda. Because at this point, it can't be done. Now, if it has to be voted on, it's going to be on the board member to make a decision which way you want to vote. You want to vote no, you want whatever the deal is. But the whole board would know. Because what I'm trying to avoid is one board member getting information or not getting information. We all need it. And so I think saying no is appropriate. I mean, and again, I don't know the nature of some of the questions. I think I have an idea of what some of them are. But most agenda items need a board majority. As long as the board majority is good, it doesn't matter what one board member has to say at all. It's a board majority.
Very clear, that is very clear.
No, but
what they have to say is important, but it doesn't affect the vote, I think is what you're trying to say.
Ms. Canora, you're absolutely correct. Again.
Let me clarify.
Appreciate the clarification. Bottom line is, the board majority is the will of the board. And that's really basically the will of the board. And if we make a judgment that we don't need this information that's being asked, we have enough at a high level, because we'll admit, even I feel like some of the questions are really at the micromanagement level. And I'll give an example. Ms. Ryan likes examples. Measuring the toilet. I mean, we really didn't need to go out there and measure a toilet with a ruler. I mean, the concern, Ms. Ryan, for your sake, would have been, I have some safety concerns about this X, Y, and Z, and can you verify before we finish this and pay it that it's taken care of? Simple enough, we're all good, but when it's, I need to know it's meant 12 inches and all this safety stuff, it was really over the top. And so my point is, you can ask a very overarching comment and question and ask administration to take care of it, because we're not going to do that stuff.
Yep, I did that Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning.
It was a
Yep,
little
that's
much in that board meeting.
No, it had already, but you weren't at the meeting where it was asked. I have elected officials though,
Well,
I can let you know what.
Well,
I
then
said
you asked the
exactly.
question twice, because then you asked it in the board
I
meeting
did, I
anyway.
didn't have an answer.
So regardless, it could have been handled differently, in my humble opinion. So just to get back on track, the idea is that you don't stress. You already have a workload that's pretty heavy, and we don't need you detour trying to answer a question that came up at the 11th hour that's not easy to answer. If it's easy to answer, just give it to us. But it requires extensive research. And then to your point, I want to make sure this is clear for the audience. We are a team. We all have to help one another. And if there's a concern on something, yes, tell the superintendent. And I would tell Ms. Canoyer, there's a concern, and obviously leave it there. There's nothing nefarious happening in my book. But, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Connor, if I just, then I'm really going to we're going to get on with whatever's next. I know, because someone asked earlier about the when we were at a similar junction and trying to get the regular board meetings down to the 2 hours and move the roundtable discussions into a workshop setting, it was nearly impossible. And there may be a collective gasp in this room when I say what I'm going to say, and I don't think I've said this to you all yet, but I'm about to. We went to BAA Legal and we compared our monthly board calendar, agenda items when they occurred, to BAA Legal, Board Shall. And we had a workshop on items that are on our board master calendar that do not have to be on it. And so I, of course, asked the question, why are they on it? You want to know what the answer was? Because they've always been on it. They were on it last year, and they were on it the year before, so I chased one of them one time, just for grins. Started in 1972, somebody put it on there, no one ever took it off, and so every year, they were just going over something. And I'm going to show you the body language of board members when that item was talked about. I mean, like, everybody was tuned out. So my point is, on our good governance column of the performance management, we would do it wasn't every year, but every other year, because we cleaned it off. The first meeting we hit was like an hour long, and everybody was like, what? And we were like, well, we went back to board shall, you know, and so we cleaned. And then we were growing and building, and y'all know that, so we had to have construction reports, but we were real meticulous and intentional about what went back on the agenda, if that makes sense. And that's how we tightened it up. And it didn't mean that work wasn't happening. It was just stuff at the board meeting that we were just getting sideways on, and we were trying to create space to have meaningful conversation about the scorecards, what we were trying to create. Anyway, I'll throw that out there as another, and I may add that on that list of performance management. I have a committee, I have to say that too. Anyway, I'll stop with that.
So can we kind of agree then that, except in the case of emergency, questions to the superintendent about the upcoming agenda should be in by close of business on the Monday before the board?
That's, in my opinion, a little soon, a little quick, especially since we're really not getting all the data by then, unless that's going to change.
I'm talking about regular board meetings,
Me
not
too.
necessarily special meetings, because sometimes those are different timelines.
I understand,
But-
and I mean regular board meetings. And most of the questions I try to ask are to let you know I'm going to ask this in the boardroom, because I do believe the public needs to know the answer to. It's not just for me. So some of the questions I ask have put my mind to rest, and I haven't felt the need to bring it back. But most of the questions I send to you are to let you know I'm going to be asking this, so that you can be prepared, because I don't want to come across ever as a surprise or catch you off guard. That's never my intent. But I do feel this is a little tight to hold the board to.
So what's your suggestion then?
Well, I think it's a shall paragraph anyway, so like, these are all just recommendations, you know.
That's, well.
But it's not, you can't say you can't ask a question in a board meeting, like, that's not. we
No,
can't
I'm not
put it
saying
in
board
there.
meeting.
No, I'm
I'm
talking
saying
about
questions before the board meeting.
Before, and Monday.
Oh.
So that they have time to respond before the board meeting, because as you have said, you need this information to help you make the decision. Now, we've also talked about, he can say no, I'm not gonna have time to get that for you.
Yeah.
But what is the agreed upon timeline then, that most of the questions that you need to help you form how you're going to vote should be given to the superintendent?
At least Tuesday. Monday's just coming off a weekend. Sometimes people are really busy during the weekend and haven't had a chance to look at the whole packet, and the whole packet's not always uploaded. So, Tuesday, would that work?
But then this is my mind working, because you had a busy weekend, we're making them scurry because now they've got one less day to prepare the questions that we have as a board.
And I think if you're trying to change it from a shall to a must, well, then that's, all of a sudden, if we're within whatever the arbitrary timeline is, then I guess I don't get to email you, then I guess all my questions come out in the board meeting, and I don't think anybody wants that. That's not the way we want, I mean, is everybody not doing the best they can? Do we really not think that we're all
There's
getting through
another
our board books
derogatory
as
mark.
quickly as we can? No, I'm asking, what's the purpose of
But
changing
the way you
it?
The purpose
the way you
is
just
the
questioned
barrage
it
of
was-
questions that come in on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from one particular board member, and we all get responses to that, that are such in-depth, and here's where I'm going to the next part, are such in-depth questions that require
Hours of
beyond
research.
what I have been trained to know, cross that line from strategic to tactical. And if they're taking their time to do all the research and all the stuff on stuff that has not already been put together, they don't have time to do their real job. And it's making for a very uncomfortable workplace for them. So the next part then is, if you're not agreeable to a deadline on timeline, then we have to really talk about the types of requests that are being put in. Already, we talk about questions and asking for reports that are not already built. Where is that? That is on page 12.
Are we moving off of two?
4A. Well, they all wrap in together, so I want to talk about it all at once. That's why I kept saying, it's coming to the next part, it's coming to the next part.
Okay.
So board members may request existing information and existing reports only. So if you're asking them to compile a new report with information that's not already located in one place for them to point it to you, then that already says that we have to approve it as a board majority. And
100%.
part
I
number
never
two.
ask for a new report. Give me an example if you wouldn't mind, ma'am. I don't ask for new reports. I'm very deliberate in what I ask for. I do not ask for new reports to be created.
I would say the email request from all the cabinet members, and I don't remember what the dates were, from November to something.
To December.
There was a request for all emails.
That wasn't a report, that was a PIA request.
Well,
It's still a request for information and a
Right,
report.
well, you
Yeah,
can't
it's-
control that, that's in the education code.
but
so.
it's using the power of the board.
You have no authority to change that, that's in the education
Well,
code.
I did call TASB Legal last
Right.
Friday, and the legal code does say that board members should have access. That does not mean we get emailed copies, it does not mean we have hard copies. They specifically said that when we need supporting documentation to go along with an agenda item, we should be given an area in central office to sit down and look over that information.
That is not what
access.
15-12 says, so.
That
if
is
you wanna
exactly
correct
the
her
way,
on what 15-12
that is
says.
exactly the way TASB Legal went over it.
Okay.
Well,
Yes,
and then
that
if
is not at all
if it's
what
a
the
PIA
says.
request, then you should be charged.
No. Okay, so 15-12, for everyone in the public does not know, school board members do not get charged for open records
So
or
are you
P.
doing it as a PIA or a school board member? Again,
So, requests for information, I can, do you want a copy of it?
I
'Cause
want you
have
to
it
stop
right here.
asking frivolous questions, is what I want you to do.
Okay.
I mean, that was a lot of time cabinet took to fill that request.
Okay.
It
And-
seemed
yeah.
like
That's
a
great.
private investigation was what my concern was. I
Yep.
didn't understand how it had anything to do with student outcomes.
Or board
you know,
business.
or
Or
board
What is
business.
Corbett? It's about
It-
rolling
it
in.
was
Oh, we
every-
can talk about rolling forms, I'm pretty sure you
It
don't
was
wanna
every cabinet
take that out
member's
in open session.
email with specific outlines. I want all the emails from each cabinet member.
It was exactly what Mr. Macia says. There are people on this board who are getting information and it is not being shared with the entire board. There is also communications that are occurring between more than 3 people at one time about board business. So again, if y'all want to talk about it here, then you're fine talking about it here. But that is the only request I've done that was not related to a pre-existing board agenda item. We can make it one if y'all want to, but
All you had to do is say,
either
I
way, the
have
code
a,
says what it says, so we can't change our governance handbook to be out of compliance with the Texas Education Code. So I recommend y'all go read 15-12.
and back to Faulkner's remark about you feeling like you got us or something. If there's an issue or
What?
concern,
I
because
said-
because
wait,
you're saying, hey, there's all this
Stop putting
rolling.
words in my mouth.
When you
This is
say-
getting to the
my
point.
word. That was
Okay.
my word. He was
And so Ms. Faulkner said that, and
I
so
did.
bottom line is that if you have a concern, as a team, what do? We talk about it.
We usually go in closed
And-
session
and
and
we
drop
talk about
F-bombs
it.
at each other. If you want to be real, that's usually how it
I've
ends.
never, ever dropped
wanna
an
talk-
F-bomb at you,
Nobody
ever.
Oh, Miss Faulkner, there were
Ever.
40 people standing outside the room when you did it? Okay, all right.
I think
I don't
I
think this
used
is
the
being,
word
no, it was
hell.
F, and the board
No,
president
no.
said what she said right after you said the
No,
F-bomb.
that's,
Okay.
that is
Let-
absolutely
let me
not
There
finish
are
true.
my thought,
witnesses
please.
and
not
Let me-
true.
Let me finish
Okay.
my thought. My thought is
Go there.
that as board members, we can't separate and just be a parent. We can't just say, hey, I want to be, I mean, legally, maybe, but the ethics behind it, ethically, you shouldn't be asking. It's not you to provide the investigation or you to lead. If you have a concern, you bring it to the board president and we talk about it. That's what a
So
team
what is the
does.
proposed change to this document? Which page are you all proposing to be changed?
I'm not proposing a change.
Well, that's the
I am
agenda item is
proposing-
changes to this document. So can we get back to,
I am proposing that we remind ourselves of this so that when you get the response that that's asking for a new report, you'll understand where it lies in our good governance handbook.
oh yes, new reports, yes. Reports,
New
not information
It says
or
existing
documents.
information, existing reports. Existing.
Okay.
If I could help for clarification purposes, even things that sometimes one of us may think that are existing documents, as simple as work orders. I need every work order at a particular campus from this date to this date. That's not something that you just push a button and print.
You do. You do. It exists in a system of record with a query and a print. If it takes administration or someone who
He's
works.
telling you it doesn't
Okay.
work that way. And since you are not the superintendent, I'm pretty sure that you
Okay.
don't know.
Okay, understand that if you fail to provide records to a school board member that are relevant to something, and they exist in a system of record within this district and you refuse to provide it, there are legal implications for this district.
You have to have
And I
access to it.
recommend, that is not what the code
It
says.
does
Please
say
go
it.
read the code.
I did read the code and I
Right.
called
And-
Jasmine.
And you're not a lawyer,
That's right.
so I'll talk to, we'll talk to
Neither am
legal
I.
counsel.
That's
All
why-
right,
Remember, you
let's-
have no
let's-
law degree.
Let's bring it down
Pull it
some,
down.
please. Let's bring it
Read
down
it.
some.
You're not a lawyer.
yourselves.
I'll ask my lawyer.
Again, we're also talking about that line between,
I would,
you know, the kind of information you're requesting. Why would you need all the work orders from this date to this date? Let's just give that as an example.
at any particular campus.
At any particular campus.
For a
What's the
strategic
purpose
level
of
of-
that? When you could send an email saying, I have concerns about what's happening here, would you give me an update?
And it was brought up, so let's use this as an example. Let's talk about Candlewood HVAC as an amazing example and why this is on the strategic realm. So I have brought this up at bond oversight multiple times, multiple. And again, elected officials can testify how many times I brought it up. At some point, it still wasn't getting fixed. And then I asked, I'm like, well, how many work orders? Because your answer to me is always, hey, make sure they're putting in the work orders. Well, it's awesome, let's see if our staff is doing their job. Boom, 86 work orders in 2 months, right? Still not getting fixed, still not fixed. There are kids who had to move out of their classrooms in the middle of interim testing because it's still not fixed, and this has been going on 5 months. This impacts our students, it impacts our data, it impacts our pregnant teachers and other people who can't function in classrooms that are 86 degrees. So if you think school board is not responsive to those things that are happening on our campuses, and I've given it 6 months to remedy itself, then that's up to the community. And I really hope the community watches this, because elections are coming.
Well, my question
one?
is,
I
how
don't
did,
appreciate that threat, ma'am.
how,
Please tone that
there
down.
again, how did you come about this information if you didn't go to the superintendent for this information about the temperatures in the classroom?
Because per the code, employees and parents are allowed to talk to school board members. Oh, and I know parents all over this district. I know staff all over this district.
So
I know
do
everything that's going on everywhere. And I know it's a witch hunt always, because they like to go and interrogate everybody all over the place. They're always trying to figure out who I talk to, because I won't tell them, because retaliation is real in this district. So yeah,
Oh,
I have
ma'am.
lots of parents who will tell me all sorts of things that they hear
All
from
right,
teachers and
moving
other
on.
staff. So that's how I find out.
Moving on, this is a
But I went to
reminder.
the superintendent.
Dr. Fields wanted to say something. I don't know if
And
you still
Dr.
do.
Gibson.
Okay.
Dr. Gibson, did you have
Well,
something?
No, that's fine, mine can wait. Thank you.
This is embarrassing.
I
I ain't
agree.
putting
This
it on
was,
the agenda.
Ms. Ryan, can I please complete a statement without a response?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
This is embarrassing. We just had this conversation in front of every person in Judson ISD. This could have even been happening in closed session because it was about specific individuals. It did not have to happen in front of everyone. And all I'm asking is, this is a reflection of our leadership ability. Let's just be cognizant to talk about the things that we can improve and get better on in a way that doesn't affect everybody in Judson ISD. In addition, I can tell you that, Ms. Ryan, we don't want to respond to everything that you say. I've asked, was it 86 different responses, Mr. Brooks?
I'm looking at all of the work orders that came from Candlewood. I can't say that all of these work orders were directly
Related to the
related
HVAC
to
system.
the HVAC system. These are all, what I was sent was all of the work orders for Candlewood, period, from June to the present.
And that could include something on the playground to the merry-go-round to the HVAC system. And what I'm asking is if you have a specific concern, enlighten us to what you feel like that specific concern is, and I will personally go over, just like I did the day after, to measure the toilets and check the heat in the room. But we don't have to ask for all of the work orders for campus when we're looking at the HVAC or the temperature in a particular room at campus. So let's just be specific. But I would ask the board and the cabinet that we put Judson ISD in the best light all the time and stop the bicker, please. Yes, sir.
Well, that's good. I guess this extends that just a little bit. There's not enough trust in this room to implement a performance management system. And
Dr. Gibson, I have to gently push back.
Okay,
There's an enormous
please.
trust in this room. And remember, again, experience. I've worked
Correct,
with
yes.
28 different board members in my life, 4 different superintendents, cabinet members. This is the most united I've ever seen a board,
Good.
minus one. And that's it. And so you talk about trust, it's here, but you are right. We do have people here that are undermining public trust with half-truths. And so.
Do not make another slanderous comment about me lying to the public again. I have warned you on this. So unless you're ready to give an example
I have the
of a
floor.
time I lied,
I have the floor.
that's
I do not
awesome.
appreciate you interrupting.
If I need to get legal counsel, just let me know.
I have the floor. So I'm going to address her concern, because again, we got to be real. I like to be real with our community, because there's politics at play. She keeps bringing up the elections, because there's elections. So let me be real. There was a time where we actually had to pull back stipends, and she told everybody on Facebook, we cut salary.
I didn't,
And-
no,
and so-
sir, that's a
She said
flat out
pay.
lie. That is a
Pay,
flat out lie.
pay, okay,
Prove
pay,
it.
pay.
Okay.
You cut pay.
Yeah.
So now teachers are calling me saying, why did we cut pay? We didn't cut pay. We just cut stipends, and it's only because they were part of the ESSER fund.
It was incentives, not
Incentives, in
stipends.
fact, even incentives, but teacher pay went down because of the incentives. So that I've already put out as another example of not completely accurate information, but it caused an uproar. Again, I don't know why you're trying to paint this picture that we're chaotic. We have one chaotic member. We're pretty united here, and that's what's important to know. And
You're just not united with the community. The problem
No.
is the 6 of you are united, and they do not reflect the views of the community.
We
That's the
absolutely
issue.
do.
is
Yeah, we
that
do.
6
We're
indi-
elected by the community.
And again, I think-
And you
yeah.
reflect the people that speak to you, which is not the entire district.
And I dare
Right,
say
good. I
that,
hope
that
everybody sees that on camera.
again, hold on,
Reflect.
hold on. 4 terms. I've been pretty responsive to my community, so I have a pretty good feeling I'm still responsive to them. So like I said, Dr. Gibson, gentle pushback.
I like the
think
pushback.
we are united, and I think the community is united because I feel in my heart, right things are gonna happen as we go forward. But we still have to, we have a team member that is just not aboard. And Dr. Fields, I do want to reiterate, I appreciate your refocus on things. It's really, I'm very passionate about this district, right? I care about what people say. I fought for employees and for students. I don't want people tearing it down because I know we're doing our best and we're still going to be doing our best. We have work to do. So I can appreciate your reminder of that. But it's, I mean, what's the thing? Boats already left the harbor. We sort of just got to have that real conversation that we have a little bit of tension here, but we need to work through that. So
Yeah,
sorry.
and I want to accept the pushback comfortably, so, and I'm going to make it a little more specific. If I was them, and by the way, the work in that scorecard, I would say is, I'm going to use the term best in class, because I've watched what y'all have done. Okay, right, and you haven't gotten the chance to share it, including today, because of
us.
because of fear. Well, no, it was narrowed down a little bit by Mr. Macias a moment ago, because of fear of anything that's in there being wrong or weaponized, and we can't even say what the number is. We can't even get to saying what the number is. There's numbers on there that y'all want to improve. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
It's not just these softballs. We've had this conversation over and over. There's challenging numbers in there. Man, if I was that table, the tactical, tier 1 tactical, I would be fearful of putting any number out on camera. That's all I'm saying. I would be very fearful.
Ms. Kamala,
Yes, Mr. Slings?
may I ask a question to our lawyer?
Yeah, that's why she's here.
I
Yes,
believe,
but I will not be giving legal advice in open session, so if we need to
No,
adjourn
it's
to
just a
closed
question.
session so that I can do legal advice, happy to do that.
but anyway, what I've read is the superintendent has the right to wait up to 20
Yes.
days
Yes.
to answer my request.
That's correct.
And if I send something, all he's got to say, Mr. Salinas, within 20 days, we'll get your information. And it should be that way.
All right, I really would like us to focus on our good governance handbook and get back to that. We've talked about the time limit on speaking, and we've come to an agreement there. We have not come to an agreement on the timing for questions on agenda items, so we'll leave that for the next update, I'm assuming. I would also like to address behavior on the dais. A number of us are on our phones during the meeting, and it already is in our good governance handbook that you're not communicating with other people by electronic means during a board meeting. So I would love us to have a face down, boom. I understand if you're a parent and there's a call that comes in about it, or a text that comes in about a child, but that should be very rare and not the entirety of the meeting being spent scrolling on the phone or typing questions to somebody in the audience to have them stand up and ask or bring forward. Can we refocus on that? Is that an agreement? It's already in our
I have
handbook.
children and.
Everybody
so-
uses their phone.
If I have to look up something.
I
and I'm
communicate
looking
with
it up-
Russ.
Yeah. Like
Because
today, I was
I
pulling
need
up an
to.
email that I had sent district, just as an example, right? Like, so you're gonna see me on my phone for.
I see you on your phone a lot.
Am I not
and-
paying attention to the meeting?
That's the appearance that it gives to the community, and one of the things that we talk about is being present. You've talked about facial things, you've talked about body language, you've talked about all that. That is a form of body language. If I'm on my phone, I'm not paying attention. So I want us to be cognizant of that, please.
Yes, and if anybody.
Does anybody else have something that they wanted to bring up?
I'll take it into account.
Does anybody else have something that they'd like to bring up as an addition or change to the good
Well,
governance handbook?
I'm just wondering if we can agree to Tuesday on that one item before we table it and go elsewhere? What if we do a time limit based on
At noon?
when we get the documentation? Let's say no
72
later,
hours
no
from
later
when
than
the board book
72
publish?
hours after the board book with supporting documents comes in. That way, if it's Friday, we know we have till Monday. If it's Saturday, we have till Tuesday, but no later than Tuesday.
And then what happens if you don't get a chance to send in by Tuesday? I'm just asking then what?
Well, then you know that you're not going to get your question by board meeting.
Then
Or
you're
you
gonna-
can call.
Okay,
For
that's
sure
what I'm
you
just
won't.
asking.
Or you can call and ask. and
Say,
just
hey, where are we on
clarification.
that? Yeah. Is that agreeable?
Yeah.
I mean, I've always
72
said
hours
Monday,
after board
as
book
fast as I can.
is published?
Okay,
And
we'll try
so
that.
when is board book going to be published? Saturdays,
Friday
Mondays?
nights.
The intent is to have it on Fridays.
Because
But things
obviously
happen
our board
sometimes.
meeting is Thursday.
Right.
So 72 hours would be Monday. So I just want to know when we could expect it. That's why, to Ms. Stanford's point, if we get it Saturday or Friday night, by Monday, by close of business, should be pretty ample. You have all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and Monday to make that review. I would be willing to push as far as Tuesday at noon, if that meant we're okay, we gave a small window on Tuesday for, but that would be my
That
recommendation.
would give you Monday evening as well.
Yeah.
Why don't we?
And we're
why don't
often
we-
closed on a Monday too for a holiday.
Sometimes
Sometimes
that's
we
true
are.
too.
So
But-
Tuesday at noon, is that
I think-
agreeable?
I think that
I
would
want
work.
to check in with
We are
with
good.
Dr.
We
Fields
are
as
good,
well,
ma'am.
because
We are good.
what we do affects him. All right,
Yes,
so,
Okay, Tuesday noon. And then we'll see. If we have problems, we'll come back to it then. So,
Correct.
all right. Did anyone else have suggestions? These were things that I had kind of been percolating in the back of my mind based on conversations that have come up.
are we gonna put anything in writing about body language, facial expressions, tones of voice? Are we gonna go ahead and do that? Or just agree?
I think it's just a mention, and then, when we talk about
We
board
can-
member roles and responsibilities.
We can add it to this one next time that it's,
for
that is
review?
reviewed
Yeah.
and read, updated.
At the next update, if it continues to be an issue, then
And
we
maybe
can
we
do
can
that.
also agree then that we can call each other out, just say, keep it down, or to help remind each other, because sometimes the moments get heated, and we might not be aware that we're sounding
Negative.
Negative, exactly. So we can maybe help each other during the course of the meeting and help remind each other.
Do we need to review the visits to campuses? Section on 14?
Page 14.
Mr. Mayor, before we get there, I do have one thing to comment on. Please forgive me. And it's just because I got some criticism about it. I wanted to say, I don't always agree with the good governance. There was a process some months ago, or years ago now, my goodness, where I was mandated to use my Judson email. I did not agree with using my Judson email, but the board said, you will use your Judson email. So I begrudgingly use it. But in my email, I put, if you want a quicker response, you want to reach me, here's my Gmail, because I've used my Gmail since 2010. And so some of the criticism is that I'm doing something shady. I've had some crazy people tell me you're doing something shady. I'm not. I just prefer to use my Gmail for school board business. You can call me, you can email me at Judson, but I want on record publicly to know there's nothing sinister. And the only reason I use my Gmail is because it gives some protection to employees, because our Judson email can be reviewed. And I want to make sure employees feel safe if they're going to communicate with me, period. But again, just for the sake, just want to put it out there, because there's nothing sinister for anyone that's listening thinking, why am I still using my Gmail? Just my preference. Thank you.
One more thing that came up, and it's not part of the good governance, but it reminded me that it's about our behavior as a board. We have an issue sometimes with quorums. Please respond to the calendar invites that Betty gives you, that sends out. If there's a calendar invite that comes out, you need to respond. And even if you're not sure you're going to be there, put a question mark, maybe. Because we had an issue the other day where we had a quorum and we should not have had a quorum. And it's because people didn't respond, and other people just show up at the last minute, and you cannot do that. That's
And
a big
And
problem.
the opposite too. If you say you're gonna be somewhere,
Then
and
be
then
there.
something comes up,
Then change
immediately,
it.
because we may have 2 or 3 people.
That still would like to
all
go.
of a sudden something happened, and that happened to us once too, but we think only our thing may not affect the quorum, but we may not
But
know there's 2 or 3 other things going on
Right.
that might affect the quorum.
So please,
Uninvite yourself too.
that's just about housekeeping here.
Yes, ma'am. And I did that.
I'm not trying to.
It was me.
It happens all the time, but when I go and look at calendar invites, I see 2, maybe 3 people responding consistently. So please, on the calendar invites, make sure that you're accepting, turning it down, saying maybe, and then go back in and update if those things change.
Will do.
All right, so we have talked about time limit on speaking, and we have talked about questions on the agenda being by Tuesday noon. Those are the 2 updates to the Good Governance Handbook that we have all agreed on. So I'm going to make a motion about that. I want us to vote on it, and then Betty, I think, printed out a signature sheet for us to pass around. So
Ms.
that-
Con, we're on page 6.
Yes, sir.
In the norms, the 4th norm, the board's treatment of all people is courteous, dignified, and fair. The board always maintains a respectful atmosphere.
Yeah.
I mean, you could add, or comma, including nonverbal. I'm just saying, like that was mentioned earlier.
Agreed, I think it should be in there.
Because the.
Which bullet point is that?
Page
the
6,
Page
bullet
6, the
Four.
4th bullet. The board's treatment of all people is courteous, dignified, and fair. The board always maintains a respectful atmosphere.
Including using
Including-
appropriate body language,
Including
respect,
Nonverbal
nonverbal.
communication.
Thank you. Let's talk to the word person about words. Say that again. Nicole.
Including nonverbal
Nonverbal
communication.
There you go, perfect. That's just, I heard that mentioned earlier. It seems like a good landing spot, right?
That is a good spot.
Oh, you're gonna have to update, look right there, second to last bullet. So if you're changing
Yeah.
something with that, you're gonna change that bullet too, because that talks about
That's a good-
agenda questions.
Agenda,
Yeah.
the latest.
It's in
right.
two places.
Yeah, okay.
So either take it out of there because it's already somewhere else, or
We can take it out.
ad-
Yeah.
adjust.
So
whatever.
killing this.
The second to
Yeah.
last?
The second to last.
Is about
addresses
when
the issue we
questions for
already
agenda.
talked about.
So it can be
Thank you for
deleted
that.
is what we're saying, because it lives in
Yes.
another place of the, okay.
Okay. So I'm going to move that we amend our good governance handbook by including the 5-minute time limit on speaking with a 3-minute time limit for rebuttal on agenda items at board meetings. That we include nonverbal communication on page 6, bullet number 4. And that we
Eliminate.
require that questions on agendas are in by Tuesday noon.
Second.
All right, any other discussion on any of those?
What about the removal? You want to put that in the motion or not?
And that we're going to delete the second to last bullet on board meeting norms.
Okay. Second.
Ms. Faulkner seconded. Any other discussion on that? All right. If you're in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 5-1. All right. Now, back to scorecard finally.
Excellent. If we could, so what we've done, is this working, Russ? Is it working? Okay, gotcha. What we did was we went through the scorecard and we went through all of the long-term measures. And what we would like to do today is just start off with 1.1 and then make a couple of recommendations for changes, because we told the board that we would have to come back and make some corrections on numbers that we originally had up there in terms of us going to go from, is there any way to pull it up here, the scorecard? Going from one particular number to another based on the taper report. Because we put preliminary numbers out there, but now that the special ed numbers are in and we've got an official taper, the numbers kind of change slightly. And then I would like for each person in that particular area to be brief for the sake of time and talk about where we are in moving towards what we said our goal was going to be, our long-term goal was going to be for 2028. And if we're still working on establishing a baseline, we're clear about that as well. Make sense? So, Dr. Saunders, if you could go ahead and start, and I'm going to give you this, that way everybody
Yes, sir.
can hear you in the house.
Since I'm the first one to go, if I'm too long-winded, by all means, please let me know.
Yes, ma'am.
So, as you guys know, we went through the tactical actions originally, and then we also did the long-term outcomes, which you see to the right. As Dr. Fields said, as a reminder, when we first built the scorecard and it was adopted in October, we used preliminary data. Mr. Salinas, you're good? Yes, sir. So what we've done is, now that the taper report has been released, we updated those numbers, which we alluded to at the last board meeting, that you will notice those numbers did increase a little bit.
Kristen?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, can I jump in one more time?
Yes, sir.
In addition, the other thing on the agenda is the evaluation form, and all we were gonna do today is talk about what the evaluation form is gonna look like. I'd like to pass out to you now, because it matches the scorecard. And then as we go through this, you can see, we'll ask for a return of this evaluation form later, but if we pass this out to you now, then, you'll be able to mark on there as we go forward. And this is for you, Dr. So you can see how it aligns. And here's the other piece. I'm sorry, Chris. I'm sorry, Dr. Saunders.
Yes.
I have no trouble seeing that because I have good looks. Just saying.
What's tiny, though?
Maybe that.
It's a little bit bigger in the evaluation form.
Okay, yeah. Email, I can zoom in.
If you look at it, here,
Okay.
they're all aligned.
All right, Dr. Saunders.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
So, as I was saying, once we got the taper report, we updated those numbers, still using the 10-5-3 formula that we talked about originally. So, with your permission, I'll just kind of walk you guys through reading, and then that same rule will apply to all the other content areas you see. So you can see approaches per the taper report is currently sitting at 71%. With our 10-5-3 goal, we would be moving that to 81% by 2028. Per our current taper, meets is at 44%. You're in the right place, Mr. Salinas. You're in the right place, sir. It's right there.
It's easier on the big one.
Yeah, that was too little. Don't
I'm sorry.
try to
Look
read that
at,
one.
she's going straight down the middle in the yellow there, right here.
She can see me now.
So meets from 44 to 49 by 2028, again, reminding that 10-5-3. And then masters from 12 to 15 by 2028.
And again, these can change again. These are not like.
The conversation we continue to have is as we monitor these goals, if we hit that benchmark and you as a board collectively decide that we need to make an adjustment, that would be a conversation. If you notice to the far right, there is an additional data set for you. This just shows where our preliminary data was when we adopted on October 9th, what the 2024 taper reflects now. You'll notice our 2025 MOY data, which we reported on last Thursday. And then we also took the additional step to break this out by our 2025 goal, our 2026 goal, our 2027 goal, and then finally our 2028 goal. Do y'all have any questions about those goals?
I think I said, do we have our House Bill 3 goals for these two? I think you guys were gonna go back and add the two House Bill 3, 4, specifically for this one, because we have to have a third grade reading meets and a third grade math meets is required to be a specific board goal on House Bill 3, right? Dr. Gibson, we talked about that last
Yeah,
time, that you were gonna have them go back and,
I don't know if are they
Do the HB3
embedded in the
stuff.
data
It's embedded
set
in
that's
there.
there? Can you, but
Well, yes, part of it is also in our district improvement plan. If we need to have those outlined in a separate data set here, we can
Well,
do a side-by-side.
one thing that I've seen is just an asterisk at the bottom
Absolutely.
of that, just saying House Bill 3 goals in district improvement plan, but embedded in this up
This
above.
data set does capture those, but
Right.
absolutely, we can
But
outline
not
it that
in
way
the
with an
exact
ask.
form
Yes, sir.
that's
yeah, 'cause
required.
I think we wanna be able to look at that, because that's what the state, state's got some big
But
goals
it's in-
for certain.
It's in the district
It's in the
improvement
district
plan.
improvement plan.
I think some statement
annotate
right
it,
here
yes, sir.
just to,
Yeah,
and I've seen
that's good.
districts, well, I've seen just an asterisk that the House Bill 3 goals live in third line above, or, you know, just showing where they live.
Yeah.
And that they're also embedded in the
Yes, sir.
district improvement plan as adopted by the board. Just
Yes, sir.
something to clarify that.
Maybe just an asterisk by it with a, at the bottom, House Bill 3 goal.
Yeah, or take a look, NEISD has theirs online too, so they have exactly like, looks, a lot of it looks like this. But then just right below it, they articulate just the HB3s for like the reading and math. They're great just under that one
Yes, ma'am.
section. Then under CCMR, they have it just there, that portion. It's a really good example to use.
Noted. Thank you for the feedback.
John?
In 1.2, the first priority, student participation, for collecting the baseline data for 2024-25, we identified 4 extracurricular and co-curricular programs for student participation to track. And those include ROTC, athletics, marching band, and CTE Level 3. We are recommending an edit. We had originally considered 6th through 10th. We are now looking at 9 through 12 for the first year. We intend to add middle school grades level later in similar areas. We currently have 6,399 students at the 3 comprehensive high schools. And enrollment in the programs, we're looking at 49% across the 4 programs of student participation.
What objective were you on?
1.2.1.
Once again. Thank you.
So out of almost 6,400 high school students at the 3 comprehensive high schools, we have 3,139 students participating in those 4 programs. So we are currently sitting at 49%. We hope to increase to 55% as a first benchmark in 4 years. And the reason these areas are chosen is because of persistence of programming. So those are areas that we can do well and increase student participation in.
Would you ask, do you want us to hold questions to the end?
I
Or
would
you
rather
like
you
us
hold questions
to
the end.
ask at the particular,
I'd rather we
at the
hold
time.
them to the end, that way we can get through the scorecard and then answer those at the end. I will say this though, in this particular document, it'll show how far we progress towards those goals that are underneath that particular, you see what I'm saying? Or over here. So it'll give you information on where we're at in terms of moving towards the goals that you see listed for this one in priority 1. And then we'll eventually get to priority 2, priority 3, and priority 4. Make sense?
And I think mine was just a generic question in terms of like the growth progress measures. I see them for some of them and not for others. Are there some of them you're still working on like the annual targets for? Because I see it on, see where it's on some points. Or is it on this one and I need bifocals?
It's really small.
it's here.
Like 1.2, like what's the annual target for 1.2? Is that on one of these pages?
The progress measures and the tactical actions are listed in the document he just shared out. So
In the
the
big-
big
okay.
document really doesn't have that listed,
have an
but it's
overview.
detailed,
So it's somewhere in here when I.
not
make it
on,
big?
not on the picture, literally detailed in words
Okay,
right
all right.
If you go right
Okay.
here,
Yep.
outcome measure on this one,
Yep,
and it'll say outcome measure from 49 to 55.
yep.
And then down here, 2028, the percentage of safety and belonging from 47 to 57.
but that's.
I was looking like,
You're
what's the
asking
goal
for a
by
year.
25? Because like she's got, Dr. Saunders had like the targets for 25, 26, 27 for MOI. I was just wondering if that was, if we had that for all of them?
You have
And
it,
if so, where?
you have it for most, except for
Okay.
the ones whose baseline just began.
Okay,
So there's
all
a
right.
few, if you remember,
Right.
that were.
Something new we
And
weren't
each
tracking,
one
it
has
didn't have
But
info,
But
like
each,
the
each
participation.
indicator, 1.1, 1.2,
Okay.
1.3, has in words right here
Okay.
at the bottom,
Some of
a
those.
tactical action as well as a progress measure.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Now I know how to read it. I'll have it, maybe it's
Okay. So I will complete 1.2, which the second component of 1.2 is student perception of safety and belonging. Our baseline for this was at 47% based on the Panorama survey. And our target goal by 2028 would be to increase that to 57%. At the Panorama study that we did this last fall, elementary was at 58%, secondary was at 49%, for an aggregate of 53.5% of students feeling, having a perception of safety and belonging. Some of the tactical actions that we consistently work for is increasing our mental health and counseling supports at the campuses and providing that data, conducting regular safety drills and discussing safety protocols with students, an increase in our law enforcement presence on the campuses as well as our safety resources.
Thank you, ma'am. 1.36.
Yes, sir. For CCMR, some of the tactical actions that we have conducted would be to hold CCMR meetings monthly at each high school to track progress using prior year data and year-to-year testing. We've implemented Texas College Bridge at the high school, including JLA, as well as embed TSI supports some of the progress measures that we have seen. There's a table included that is provided in this document that shows that we are on track to meet the long-term outcome that has been indicated. For the second part would be to focus specifically on the CCMR through IBCs with a goal of 19%. Currently, we're at 13% for our seniors as of February 9th. In addition, there's a military component. One of the things that has changed is that starting next school year, TEA will no longer have us collect the DD4 forms, and they will be receiving the information directly from the military.
That is amazing
Yes.
news.
Yes.
That is phenomenal.
That helps a lot.
This is the last year we have to collect it though, but starting next year.
Keep in mind
Okay.
that.
Oh, no, there's a huge lag time on this, I know, because there are kids
2 years.
that are long gone, but that is, oh, that's really gonna help. Oh, that makes me so happy. Thank you. That's the
But
best
that
things I've
won't
heard
be
all night.
reflected until
No, until
2027.
at least a couple of, yeah, a number of
A
papers
couple
in the
years down
future.
the road. So
Yes.
even what we're reporting on now, and so like I said, the progress that we have so far in these current year seniors is 13%.
Yeah.
You're not going to see that until,
2 more tapers, right?
yeah, so just keep
Yeah.
that in mind.
Yes.
So then, by 2028, the number of sped graduates completing an advanced graduation plan will increase from 60 to 63%. We are projected to be in the mid-60s, so we feel that we are on track to meet the long-term outcomes that we have set.
The next priority is priority 2, which is faculty and staff, 2.1.
We say that on CCMR, but just like last year or the year before, you might want to reiterate on the change in the goalpost scenario.
Correct. As you recall, a couple of years ago, we were in the middle of the year when there were changes that came about for CCMR, that everything was already baked
Baked in the cake.
baked
cooked
in the
book,
cake,
all that.
and then there
Then they pulled
wasn't
the rug out.
anything we could do to affect change. So the legislation came out with certain changes, TA came out with certain changes. We couldn't do anything about it because the current seniors that were sitting there,
Graduate,
Yeah.
correct.
which then decreased our numbers.
That's it.
Which we know, I think we've all been very clear that we just want you guys to make good human beings that are gonna go do something amazing, right? Like, I feel like this is the data set I care about but don't care about, because like making great humans who are gonna go off and be HVAC technicians or nurses, like that's, I think the whole board has said, go out and make great people, you know, and the data will be what the data is on that.
We also want to recruit great people and retain them, and so that brings us to our next priority, which is faculty and staff. 2.1 specifically speaks to recruiting and retaining the high-quality staff. We have a couple of long-term goals. The first one talks about staffing in the beginning of the year, so I don't have any data really right now to share with you, but what I do want to focus on is the retention rate, since we have received the 2023-24 taper report. We are excited to announce that we have decreased our teacher turnover rate from that particular report from 21.3 to 17.9. We also talked about in the development of this scorecard doing just an internal calculation where we remove resignations due to retirement and military relocation. We have a couple of numbers down there for all staff, and then just teachers where we take out those calculations, and you can see those listed there. So we'll be able to track those and just kind of better understand where we are. Some of the tactical actions that we focused on for this particular priority is launching a new resignation form that has a built-in survey about why people are exiting or resigning. There is also an option that they can request an individual exit interview. So we have been conducting those, as well as reviewing our TASB survey results to prioritize action items where it is perceived that we can do things much better. We've also continued to develop new partnerships to ensure there's opportunities for employees to engage in attaining degrees. We've got some tuition reimbursement things going on, different partnerships to help retain our staff. The next one is about improving employee engagement and satisfaction. We did speak about this particular item in our board meeting on Thursday when we went over the TASB survey results. We focused on some specific areas of that survey, so I have some feedback here on the areas for improving employee engagement and satisfaction. We selected 5 specific survey questions to track, and you can see here, I would recommend the district to a friend is a good place to work, went down by 5. My workload is appropriate for my position, down by 1. I can communicate openly and honestly with my supervisor, down by 1. I believe my pay is competitive with other districts in this area, up by 9. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank the board for always advocating for our teachers and fair compensation for them. As well as I get problems or questions about benefits when I need it, that also increased by 3. Some of those actions that we've been putting into place as far as being able to make improvements and take action is listening to the feedback and working towards possible solutions. So we hold, we try to hold monthly meetings, but we at least do once every 6 weeks, maybe with our union representative, 2 of them specifically. We track our specific areas on the TASB survey. We review feedback for our multiple teacher task force meetings. And we've also added an additional, or I'm sorry, a new annual recognition to celebrate our campus paraprofessionals. And so when we do our Teacher of the Year ceremony, you'll be able to see that new recognition. The last one on this priority is about increasing capacity and building opportunities for our employees. We are tracking some specific survey data on this one as well. I have the equipment, tools, and supplies I need to do my job. That went up by 1. I get the information I need from campus leaders. That went down by 3. I get the training I need to do my job effectively. That went up by 1. Some of the things that we're doing to specifically address this priority is that we are developing a new back-to-school professional learning format for next year so that we can address some of the teachers' feedback and recommendations regarding what they need as far as training goes. We're also creating messaging resource folders so that major district initiatives can be held, all of those resources to communicate that to families and to staff is available so that it's consistent messaging and that it is messaging that goes out in a timely manner. Priority, I'm sorry,
No,
sir.
you're up, go.
Priority 3 involves stakeholder engagement. The first one is, and stakeholders, of course, being our families, our broader community, and we want to reach them through communication, collaboration, and connection. Our first priority is improve satisfaction and engagement with parents and families. What we'll focus on as far as long-term goals for this particular priority is the increase in the followers and subscribers on our social media platforms. We've launched 2 new video segments for this year. One is to highlight staff across the district and their contributions towards student outcomes and the positive image of the district. That's called the Heartbeat. The other one is an effort to keep stakeholders informed, and we have initiated the boardroom wrap-up where there's just an overview of information on key decisions that the board makes. And so we attribute some of the increased followers to some of those two new initiatives. The next one is connecting with and increasing awareness of governmental institutions and their priorities. One of the goals that we wanted to focus on this year is including entries in our communication to staff and families regarding governmental priorities. So it's a big year this year with the 89th legislative session, so there is a lot of information going out, but we have been active for trying to increase our activity in the community to be more abreast of the information that's going on, not only in Austin, but just in our surrounding municipalities. We're increasing our attendance at the MEP meetings, our city council meetings. We have active membership for Tri-County as well as Greater SA Chamber, and we are also committee members for the Workforce and Education Coalition. Continuing to form connections with the community and business partners. Just as an update, we have now 118 community partners as of our baseline 91. So we're excited about that progress.
4.1 is to develop a prioritized district facilities plan and increase efficiency of building utilization. As you recall, there was a mandate to do a long-range facility assessment plan. And so we are underway with that. We have partnered with 2 architectural firms to conduct that facilities assessment. With that, we're going to develop a 5-year long-range facility plan and bond plan, and then identify schools as either too small or too large, and how we will then deal with those schools. The 2 firms that we chose are RBK and Corrigan, and the way we came about choosing those firms is that we were already engaged with them because of their extensive knowledge of our facilities already, because they had already done a phase 1 assessment, and so we went with them to complete this. So we went into contract with them back in October of '24. The assessment is underway, and it's due to be completed in June of this year. Once we get that assessment, we'll then sit down and come up with a long-range plan that we will complete by January of 2026.
Did you say June of this year?
Yes, ma'am.
You expect this report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great.
Also, bi-monthly meetings are scheduled, and so to discuss progress as to how we're doing with that, and that started in January. And then from there, we'll come up, develop solutions to right-size schools for their educational programs and current or projected enrollment. And so, again, the assessment plan is on the way. Mr. Macias, I always look to you for that, and we're well on their way for that.
Thank you.
And for 4.2, the outcome is to ensure that campuses and departments utilize or encumber at least 75% of their allotted discretionary funds by the end of March, just to ensure that we are on track. Our progress measure so far is we are conducting monthly internal desk audits on state allotment spending to ensure we are on track, and we definitely are, to ensure that we meet all the state mandated requirements by the end of the year. And we've conducted 3 program reviews, as you know, during our budget workshops to assess the needs of every department. We conducted one in November, December, and January. And finally, 4.3, JASD will decrease the deficit by 1% annually from the previous year's deficit. That has definitely been our goal. I can say that for this year, we actually are on track to meet it. You approved the disaster pennies, which yielded 12 million. So even though our deficit started much, much larger, we decreased by 12 million for this year. And in addition, we conducted property value study audits, which yielded an additional 5 million. So we've decreased our deficit for this year by more than 1%. that's what we hope to do moving forward. We also have scheduled a meeting with all department directors that's scheduled at the beginning of this coming month in preparation for the April budget workshop. One of the things we want to do is collaborate with all of our departments, and every department and district understands that we find ourselves in a deficit, but we want to work collaboratively. How can we still meet their needs, but at the same time, how can they brainstorm with us, because that deficit belongs to everybody. So it is something that requires everybody's thoughts and inputs. In addition, one of the things that I'd like to note, since we are addressing some changes due to taper, one of the changes that has been made very clear since the adoption of this scorecard on October 9th is the previous outcome. JISD will implement strategies to decrease the spending on energy by a minimum of 1% to 3% each year. It is very difficult for us to control what ERCOT is deciding, and we have seen a drastic increase in all of our spending, and I'm going to give you an example. Inflation costs in this district have increased by 21% since the last raise in basic allotment in 2019. Similarly, energy expenditures have increased by 21% as well. Another great example is the expenditure on our insurance that has risen by 212%. Some of these are out of our influence, and I'm asking for consideration for that to be removed from the scorecard.
The energy one, right?
Just
Okay.
the energy one.
Okay.
We're
I was
still
going back- I was
working
trying to look around
diligently
I'm like,
towards
hold on,
reducing
yeah.
our budget, but as you know, that is definitely also, we can bring our recommendations. The budget, of course, is voted on by the
Yeah,
board.
no, I'm just saying, we had 2 bullets in there, now we just have 1, is what you're
That's
asking for.
the
Okay,
recommendation,
all right.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Did you say the insurance increase was 212%? Because this says
I'm sorry,
251?
no, ma'am. My mistake, 251%.
51%, okay.
Any other things from the cabinet?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
just real quickly, I failed to mention that since we are aligning things to our recent taper report, we did adjust the staff turnover rate goal the 5-year outlook goal. So it is now 17.9% to 16.9% versus what it was when you approved it. I believe it was 21.3 to 20.3. That's just to align the turnover rate that we just received.
So before we move into the questions, I just want to say this. This is a level of detail and understanding that came from the cabinet that we haven't seen in recent years. And it's because it was a group collective effort on what the priorities were, which you guys helped set, and then some really detailed work on how we were going to get to it. And I think we're making advances in some of those areas. In some, not as quick as others, but I think that we are definitely on pace to hit our targets as we move forward in 2020. So we stand ready for any questions you guys have.
You only have one? Go.
Well, again, I'm sorry, this is the first time seeing this, so yeah, like, you guys put a lot of detailed effort in this, so this is gonna take me some time to make it really big and go over it type thing, so no, I look forward to digesting all of this. My brain takes a while to process. But one thing I know we talked about with Dr. Gibson, and it just came to my brain on, hold on, where did I mark it? 3.2, we had talked about the going to the city council meetings and then making our roster where you were gonna invite so that a board member and a cabinet member, and we'd start making the rounds. Have we started doing that? I haven't gotten any invites, I sent an email.
That was sent to me, and it hasn't had an opportunity to come back up at
Okay.
board meeting yet to
Okay.
pass the thing around because people didn't have
Okay,
calendars, they didn't know
okay.
what to look.
Okay.
So I will brainstorm with Betty and Dr. Fields
Thank you.
about how we can send that out as an electronic communication. Maybe there's a Google form we can do where you can sign up to the ones you want to go
Okay,
to.
perfect.
But I'm not there yet.
No, I just didn't wanna make sure I wasn't
No,
missing
you
out
didn't-
on anything, because
no.
I remember we had a
No.
big conversation.
And I think
and
people are
something.
still going to some
Correct.
council meetings. It's just not a formal where we have somebody at every.
Yeah, part of our
board meeting.
strategic plan is that
Exactly.
unified Judson out there with our elected officials and how we as board members can be out there and partnering with you guys and showing our face like I
So
do at
that's
the
on me. I
NED.
have
No,
dropped the
no
ball on
worries.
that, so.
I just want to make sure that was still on our plan, so no. The rest of this I need time to zoom in on. So
Yes,
thank you.
ma'am.
One thing that earlier we were talking about the cascaded scorecard, and that's a year off minimum. But a lot of, like, I was thinking about priority 2 and priority 3, but definitely priority 2. So a lot of those, they're really good, and they're district kind of driven, and your campus principals are part of that action. But then to also give them an opportunity on a cascaded scorecard to say, this is how we're doing even more for retention. This is how we're, you know what I mean? And there's even more ownership. That thought came to me earlier, so.
We think that we're going to see that a lot, especially when it comes to the campus improvement plans, department plans, because now they've got a really clear guide as to what's expected at the district level, and they can cater their campus and district plans to follow.
And I think that's great. The other thing, there was just an observation that I thought was kind of cool, is Mr. Macias, earlier, you had, I think, looked, and then you looked back and you said, I'm sorry, where are we? And the answer was 1.3. But do you see, like, it got that, like, you knew, and that's what you were looking for, which objective are we on? And it's so clear, instead of saying, oh, we're on
CCMR.
that's right, or whatever, we know what 1.1 means, we know what 1.2 means, and I don't know. That was fun to just see, we're on 1.3, or we're on 1.2. Those were just a couple of observations.
Yes, sir.
I had a question about student performance goals that I kind of wanted to direct to Dr. Gibson, just to get his input in general. And I actually got this impression from our previous superintendent that student performance goals, because your evaluation, the superintendent's evaluation is tied to them, it's almost like it creates a conflict of interest, because if they're too high, that puts at risk the superintendent. I mean, he's tied to those things, he or she is tied to numbers that we want him or her to improve, but then your evaluation is tied to it. So there's a natural human tendency, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, to not let them be too high, because then they're endangering you, the superintendent, right? So I'm wondering if we've got them where, I mean, they're a little low for me, but I'm thinking, what would the board think? Is there any, has this ever been done?
Well, yeah,
where we have a second tier goals that are more aspirational, more aggressive, that are not tied to evaluation, maybe tied to an extra accolade, maybe even a bonus. Where if we can get there.
I was thinking bonus.
Has this ever happened?
Well, bonus, yes, so there's a stretch target, for a bonus pay. I mean, I would tell you my last 12 years was very data-driven, yes, but let me just use your document. There was a target set, but it wasn't, my evaluation was not just a mathematical query of check X, check X. There was still narrative about, we didn't quite hit it on this one, and I mean, I'll just tell you, if I'm speaking frankly, there were some times we were on a 5-point, this may not be a 5-point, it doesn't matter.
It's 4. It's
okay,
4.
It doesn't matter, just
pick,
can be 7, can be 9, can be 10. But, and I would tell the board, man, I'd give me a 2 on that one, or 3 on a 5-point, during my part of it, and they'd give me a 4 instead of a 3, and I would say, okay, I told you to give me a 3, and they would say, yeah, but y'all saw it, it's there, we don't have to point it out to you, you've pointed it out to us several times that third grade math is, so it was like an act of good faith on their part to just say you've got the processes in place. The number drove the conversation, though. The number still drove the conversation. But I guess the board was giving me credit for the effort that we were leading, because we weren't happy because that number isn't where we wanted either, where this team wants, but there's just effort. So this is
it's tough because you want it to be quantified, but it's not an exact science. I guess is what I'm saying. There's got to be some qualitative with it also.
But there is something about goals that can inspire someone, like, ooh, could we reach that? Has the district ever?
You've done it, by the way, if I may. I'm just watching them in 15 months. The level of sophistication that they're now just rattling these numbers off. I'm going to just say this primarily. Y'all remember? All right, and how it started? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're like, wait, what? That's not the best measure? And it wasn't on camera and it wasn't in front of y'all. It was down, but then you've settled in on, maybe that measure is not perfect, but you know what? I think that's the best number we can look at to see if we're making progress or not. Is that a fair thing to say? It's like, and maybe there's another number. Y'all's mind, like if there's another number, we're gonna search for it. But I know just the fact that y'all can now just say, that's our target. Are we hitting it? That's our target. Are we hitting it? Is really important, I think. So sorry, I just wanted to point that out.
Has a district ever had a second layer of higher goals that are not gonna affect the superintendent's evaluation, but it's just something like, wow, could we maybe even do this? And maybe even tie a bonus. Has that ever been done?
Yeah, that's bonus, is what that is to me when I hear that.
Well, but that'd be a separate set of goals.
It's a separate, right, I mean, it may.
Higher goals.
Right, a separate set of targets
Right.
on these goals.
In other words, not a bonus for hitting the ones that are tied to evaluation, but a bonus tied, or something tied to higher
Right.
goals. Then that gives an incentive to the superintendent and the team to push for higher, but without any threat.
To me, I think that's the way, I'm not saying you need to do it, but performance pay is the way to get at that.
So that's been done,
Yes.
consider doing that.
It has been done. I don't
So-
know whether you should consider doing it. But
So
it has
my
been.
concern with that is, I don't think he's gonna work any harder than he's already working just because we give a higher goal.
My response to
At this time,
to my
I'm not-
last employer, when they wanted to do that, you almost said word for word what I said back for them. I'm working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I don't
Yeah.
have another hour to give.
It's not an effort issue.
Right, it's not an
It's
effort
not
issue.
like-
So what I would
more
say
motivation.
is, can we work with it like it is? Let's see what happens when we get our end-of-year data, and then, because I honestly believe that with our end-of-year data, we're gonna be readjusting goals again. And I think that's
you're
gonna happen
right.
every single time we get that set of data. And they'll be higher, because I believe that we're moving in the right direction. I personally would not be ready to do something like that at this time until we get this implemented.
Well, Ms.
fully.
Stemfer, is it fair to say, Ms. Miller, that just keep an open mind about
Oh,
what
yeah.
she's
I'm not saying
bringing up?
never.
Right, okay, that's what I thought
No,
that
no,
you
no,
were
no,
not
no.
saying never.
I'm not
so-
saying
I
never.
thought you said never to.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying never, but we need to look at this, play it through, and then look at,
I worry.
do we add another level to it?
I
Like
think that's
within what,
wise.
like a year?
I think at least a year.
I think we give it a full
I
year
think we
of-
give a full
yeah.
year of work on
Definitely,
it.
and if, I'm gonna be quite honest with you guys. If you were to come with an incentive or a bonus for the aspirational goals, I would ask that you spread them out amongst the county, not me. Because they're the ones who are going to have their nose to the grindstone, watching every day. And then that's where I feel like that
But that is-
incentive would pay the biggest dividends. Because to
Sure,
your
that's-
point,
That's fine, but the goals could also be communicated to campuses like,
I would
hey,
agree.
if you guys get this.
Same thing.
You're gonna get some kind of party or something.
I can
Did
s-
anyone else have any input on this?
I can tell
I just hear
you.
dollar signs, and that's part of our.
It's killing her 4.3.
Well,
Well,
What I'm trying to communicate is the TIA is what
Yeah.
the state's trying to come back with and give teacher incentives. And I know that Dr. Saunders has talked about aspirational incentives associated as well,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir. So, I would be remiss if I didn't say one thing. Remember when we talked about developing our goals, we stuck with it being a SMART goal, right? That A is attainable. So, yes, as a district, we're making incredible progress, but I just want you to remember there are some campuses that even our 2025 goal is a reach for them. And as a principal and a teacher, it's about dangling that carrot, that realistic, attainable goal to keep teachers, students, parents motivated, thank you, moving forward, right? So that's the purpose of this. The beautiful thing about it is the teacher incentive allotment has that built-in bonus
That's a
for
really good point,
individual
Dr. Summers.
teachers
I didn't think
who
of that.
show 55% of their students making a year's worth of growth, which for us translates into what we see as our goals. So that opportunity is there, and we don't have to pay for it, right? It's gonna,
Right.
the state of Texas is
And
gonna
if
help
you're,
us
the
out
if
with
you're
that.
seeing dollar signs, Stephanie, that tells me we could actually get there, and oh my God, we have to pay something. But
Right.
that might actually cause us to get there.
But it's already built into the legislation.
At
It
the
just has to-
operational level
Right.
also, which
Correct.
is
We just need
kind
to
of.
spotlight it, highlight it, make it more.
But what she's saying is, what, in addition to teachers' salaries, it's going to be performance-based. There's going to be
That is absolutely
teacher
correct.
allotments
But we don't
tied to
have any,
performance-based.
yeah, the TIA,
Yes.
right?
Right.
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 But we don't have any teachers qualified at that level yet, do we?
We are in our data collection year right now.
Right.
So we
We're
will,
working on that.
we will know that answer around this time next year. How many teachers qualify? Remember, there's many different distinction levels that offer a bonus tied to that is basically performance pay based on growth. And it was a long conversation with lots of teachers, a huge committee that determined our subject areas, and believe it or not, they chose everything but STAR. They wanted it to be based on how much their students grew within the school year.
Well, if we can just keep it on the table, if no one has any other input, just keep it, on our radar.
I just am hesitant to take on too many things, new things at once.
I think that's
Because then you
wise,
don't know what truly, I mean, it's, you can't add too many variables into the stew because then you never know what the real recipe is. So, that's a
I think waiting.
convoluted analogy.
I got it.
I got it. So I think that's really wise, and then it hasn't hit me yet, the beauty of the TIA is that you're incentivizing the operational level, because I'm just another elephant in the room, if you do that at that table, and there's no chance at the front line, that cannot land well with the
Right.
operational level.
Correct.
I'll just put it that way.
To use your analogy, it's that flywheel, right? But
Yes.
in the classroom.
Yes.
Other questions, comments?
Oh, yeah,
Mr. Salinas? And then Mr. Macias.
Have, Dr. Field, may
Yes, sir.
I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
please? Dr. Davis.
Yes, sir, please.
Oh, okay. On the energy, are we still working with CPS where in 1 year they gave us a dividend, I don't know what?
Yes, sir.
Rebate check.
They started that a couple of years ago.
Yes, sir.
When that one started, they put little stickers everywhere, don't forget the lights, don't forget the lights. I don't know whether we've done away with that, but maybe that would be a good one, because you know who's gonna turn off the lights? Your kids are gonna remind you. If you're not gonna be in the room or something, or at the end of the day, oh, teacher, don't forget to turn off the lights. I think, but that's a great incentive, and I'm glad they're still doing it.
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, a couple of months ago, they were recognized and there was a big picture.
They had a big
with-
check.
Yeah, a huge check. So they were recognized here in the boardroom. And we've done it for years, at least since I've been here. We continue to do it, but I like your idea of the stickers, and we're gonna make sure that we have them posted.
And even, I think CPS might even provide them. If somebody can call them and say, hey, do you have, because we want to have an incentive for our schools to not to forget to turn off the lights.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Savers.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
I kept wanting to jump in when Laura was saying, does anyone else have a whole lot to say about everything?
No,
But
I thought we limited it to
within
5
my
minutes.
within my 5. So what I want to say is, keep this in mind. Alamo Colleges is what I thought of when they introduced Alamo Promise. That was really unattainable. You're going to give tuition-free college to everyone? So being on the board at that time, when we implemented it, it was one of those crazy goals, right? But it worked. And I will tell you, the similarity that I'm seeing with this administration, with this board, is that Alabama College has 6-year terms. They already have built-in sustainability, and then they have a chancellor that they promoted from within, i.e. Mr. Fields, or Dr. Fields. So bottom line, the key to success is sustainability and teamwork as you keep going forward. That was the key for them to finally figure out what more can we do. This, Dr. Gibson, is brilliant. The plan, it's built in for us to evaluate growth, measurability, consider the adjustments to them as we look at these things quarterly. It is a perfect process. And I'm very confident that it'll give us what we're looking for. And then to your point, Laura, then we can actually start dreaming about how much more aspirational these goals need to be. But it also incorporates, if we win and we involve our teachers, we involve the community, we get those layers in, that's going to be the recipe for success. And I see that vision very clearly. We're at that step where we're about to take off. And mind you, and I got to remind my community, and I don't have to remind my colleagues or you, we're fighting the other issue of poverty. And poverty in a district, we're not Sharp-Cibolo. I mean, we were some years back, but we're not now. And so we have other factors that require collaboration, extracurricular activities, things like that that are going to help the whole student. That still requires us to evaluate what we're doing, and we're doing that with this instrument. So I am very excited about direction and vision that we're going, and we'll wrap around talent, and we'll wrap around initiatives, and God, bring some more funding so we can do more with it, and we'll be in a better place. So I have to say thank you.
All right. So there's no other questions about the scorecard at this time?
I had one other thing, but I wanted to wait.
Go ahead.
See, okay, on the recruitment and retention, I really appreciate that we did that survey, and we went over it last board meeting. But I wanted to, and I don't think I did, or I don't know anyone that did, thank the respondents for filling it out. I realized we only had like 53%, 58, which is not bad.
That's a lot.
That's pretty good.
On a survey.
And I don't want them to feel at all that we're downplaying that, like that's just not enough to create, an accurate picture, because I think it's definitely something to start with. And I wanted to go on camera and publicly thank everyone that filled that out, because that does give us data to work from. And I'm interested to see, to hear from you. You said that you've already got plans in place, action steps, I think you said. And at some point, I'd love to hear what you guys are doing in response to some of those suggestions and how it's working. I'd be interested in that.
Those are really good strategic roundtable topics.
Good.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
That's it.
Yeah, can we get this on email tomorrow so we can, again,
Hang on.
lock
We're
the
going
tab
to talk
into-
about, we're going to talk about
okay.
the process next.
Okay, so I'm like, I need to zoom in.
So do you want to share with us the process of how this evaluation is going to work for you?
Yes, ma'am.
The actual, how we're going to do it? Because we're going to use this. We're going to evaluate him with this after this meeting.
So we provided 2 documents, one that says the evaluation with an intro letter, and then each of the areas with the progress measures attached. And then another one that speaks to the long-term outcomes, where you as a board member can go through, and we took the liberty, and I say we, it was Dr. Taganaw and Ms. Davis, they actually went through and put where we've improved under each one.
like that.
So now when you come over to this form that we're asking you to fill out, and if you could have this back into Alex by the Monday when we come back from spring break, what?
The 17th.
The 17th.
Close of business.
And so basically, each priority can account for 1 point. And you can give a fraction of a point, you can give a quarter of a point, you can give a half a point, or whatever, but this whole thing is a 4-point scale. So all you're doing is going through. You've got 3 areas in each of the priorities, 1, 2, 3. You've got all of the information that you need to judge on whether or not we've made advances in that area or not. And then you just mark if you feel like we're on track, or whether we met and then you give a 4.1 to 4. I'd ask that if you're going to give a 1 or a 0, that you give some
Commentary.
qualitative feedback on that. And if you're going to give a 4, give some qualitative feedback on that. And then afterwards, once it gets to Alex, she will then tally all of it and then prepare one that goes back to the board, and it'll have, and it'll say what the evaluation is. And we'll do that on the next board meeting in March.
Have discussion.
Have discussion.
So let me clarify, because there was some confusion, like
You
what?
lost me on what year
So-
we're even talking about.
So on this document right here, if you look in the yellow on the left, you see the column that has the blanks?
Yeah.
Right next to it? That's where we'll mark
Yes or no?
yes or no. You met it or you didn't meet it, the 1 through 4, correct? Or it's a 1, it's a 2, it's a 3, it's a 4 there? Yes, or is that a check mark?
It's you can do a yes or no,
Okay.
and then at the bottom, you can adjust your numbers based on how you felt about that. But each one of those in the column next to it shows if it's on track. So if you've got 3 in there, and 2 are on track and 1 isn't, then you could give 75.75 of a point. And then as you go down, you count all of that up, and then you come up with the 1 through 4.
Okay, I'm gonna need you to take me through doing
I'm
one,
not-
do
I'm
the
good
first
at math and
one.
you lost me too.
All right.
Take me through the first priority and show me how I'm gonna, pretend you're me and
I
I'm gonna
love it.
score it.
I love it. I love it. So basically, what we said on the first priority is reading 3 through 8, math
Right.
3 through 8, social studies,
Right.
and science. And as we went through this, we said that we were making advances. In addition, we had to go up on some of our levels because even our taper report brought back higher scores. So are we on point or on track to getting to where we thought we were going to get in the course of the next 4 years? I would say yes. So then you could put yes or Y next to on track, yes or
On
no.
column 2.
In column 2.
is it
On
yes
column
or a no?
2.
Okay, that part you
Then
didn't
we
lose
go-
any of us on.
Then we go to strategic objective 1.2, and we talk about promoting increased
Yes or no?
positive
Okay.
student experiences and well-being. We said that originally we were going to do that 6 through
I
10.
think we get the yes, no, you lost us on where
Okay.
we write points in.
Okay,
Right?
so then
Yes.
let's put
Okay,
yes
that's
on that one.
So now
And
we're
then,
on column
and 3 is yes
3.
also.
And then we're
Let's
going
say
to
it's
put yes
Okay.
on that one.
Oh,
So
okay.
now on this, if you've met 2 out of 3, then you could put,
Or 3 out of 3, right?
or 3 out of
Right?
3.
2 out of
2
3.
out of 3.
Right.
Right, then
Then
you
what do we
could
do
put met. So if you've got 3 Ys and a met,
Mhm.
you would think in that area, there's a 1 point.
Okay.
Now, let's say that each area, there's 4 priorities. Each priority counts 1 point. So you can get up to 4 points, 1 point per priority. Now,
Got
let's
it.
say that we came back and one of these Ys was, no, we
No.
didn't meet.
So then I would say, there was 3 of them, I'm gonna give you 67%, 6.67 points.
Although we met right here, but I'm going to give you 0.67 points. So then when you get ready to, a fraction of a point.
So the max score you can get is a 4 on
That's
the entire
it.
document?
In
Okay,
the
good.
entire document.
That's math, I understand.
Okay.
The most you can give is a 4.
Okay.
Max
That was what was missing earlier.
Yeah, the max score you can make is,
I feel like it's T-test all over again.
then you need a 4. Yeah, there's some,
I'm gonna ask him to send out,
well, if you guys go right here, I think there's
oh, I see
instructions.
it. The bottom of this.
Yes, there's instructions.
So go to the bottom, over here on the second page, if you look there. You can see priorities on track, not met, and percent here. That's where you can do your totals.
But the notes on the other
Uh-huh.
side kind of give an explanation.
A priority is considered met if 2 out of the 3 strategic objectives are on track, and each priority receives a 1-point scale. So priority 4 can get a 1 point. So if it's 2 out of 3, I would assume that's 2/3 of a point. Is that
2/3
is that
of a
what you're
point.
thinking?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
0.75, right?
yes.
I guess, but here's my confusion, is what year we're working on, because
We're working on this data.
it's the, well, except that data's all from the same year, so you can't grow on a, like, so this should be from the 22-23 to the 23-24 school year. That's what we're evaluating. We can't go from
No,
24 to
we're
24.
We were
evaluating
just going
progress
on
on these
annuals,
goals.
so we just put 25.
The baseline that we used for most of this was the 2024
Taper.
data. We
Yeah.
began working on the
Card.
scorecard since last
Last
year.
year.
It was formally adopted on October 9th.
Right.
What I recall Dr. Gibson stating is that this first formal is going to be what progress measure we can show from the time that we started working on this and the time it was formally adopted through middle of year. And the progress measures that we all discussed and that are listed in this document show progress for each of these priorities through now. So taper was May 2025 or summer 2025 and.
2024.
All right, so if
Well,
I'm looking
but
at
from
third grade
students,
reading, I should be looking at from BOI to MOI, because that's all we have, right? We
Yes.
started in October at BOI, so I'm looking for growth from BOI to MOI then, because that's the
And-
only thing covered by this,
And the data,
Timeframe.
the data set that's to the right of that,
yes, the most zoom in.
that it shows, it's got the preliminary one that we
Okay.
adopted in October, on October 9th, then it's got the 2024 taper. Then it shows you our MOI that we reported on last Thursday.
Mhm.
And then you'll notice it's broken out 25, 26, 27, 28. So in essence, what you would be doing is you'd be looking at this orange cell right here. Are we on track to meet that 2025 goal?
That's a good way to think about it, I think.
Well, because we adjusted it, so we're automatically on track because we just adjusted it.
But
Well,
it
but
doesn't-
had we not adjusted
But
it,
they
it'd be
adjusted the
higher.
end up too.
Right.
So it's not just adjusting the bottom number.
Right.
And to clarify what Ms. Canoyer just said, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
The taper report, remember that taper line that you see there, 71% in approaches? Remember our marching orders, right, 10-5-3?
Right.
We added the 10% to the 71. That's why at the bottom, for the 2028 goal, you see 81%. When we looked at this in October, we were at 69%. Then that goal, when we talked in October, was 79%. So with the taper alone, we've already upped the ante as far as the goals are concerned.
But that's because we were working off
Preliminary
incomplete
data.
data,
Preliminary
right?
data.
Like, we
Yes, ma'am.
didn't really change anything, we just didn't have the data, all we did was shift it when it always should have been 81, we just didn't know because we didn't have all the data. Okay.
We use.
Versus we didn't really say, oh, we're gonna go 2% higher than we thought. No, well, everything moved at the same time, I guess.
And one, just a
We're gonna get
caution,
this
the,
Yes,
The-
Betty's gonna,
I scribbled.
Alex is gonna email
Alex,
it digitally,
yeah.
and then we
Okay.
can, and this will be fillable at the bottom in these columns.
Yes,
It'll be fillable for us to respond
Yes.
and email back to Alex.
yes.
And can we
You
get
can do
this
it that
with all
way.
the nice words?
Yeah,
Mhm.
digitally.
Lola?
I'm gonna hold that for later. There's a legislative session going on right now, just be aware, there's a lawsuit in House Bill 4 that could make a half of what we just said, not a half, but an eighth of what we just said require an update. I'll just say that.
Black swan.
If they change the rules, and those things are underway.
So we're doing this because we have an evaluation timeline to meet.
Correct.
And that's why we're doing it now. And so this gives you until March 17th, close of
Right. Oh,
business,
yeah,
to
I
get
know
back
that
to, and I'll ask Alex to put that in the
Yes,
email.
ma'am.
And that gives you plenty of time to look at it and think about it, and if you have questions about how it works, you're welcome to reach out to me, because I think I understand it, or reach out to Dr. Fields.
We're sending it back to Alex, or sending it back to an attorney?
To Alex.
Alex.
Alex will collate and total the data. All right, clear as mud?
Yeah. Wait.
And I think that is all of our agenda then. Do we need to do, we need to take action on the evaluation instrument itself. So let's do that vote, so that we have it, we have to approve the evaluation instrument.
I mean, it would have
So-
been nice to look at this ahead of time. All right.
Well, it's just,
I just went
it's
to
tied straight
scorecard.
back to the scorecard, so.
Correct, but yes, I'm just saying, we needed to see the draft instrument at all before
I've been
today.
working on it up until
So-
Dr. Gibson got here, so.
Okay.
All right. I move that we approve the superintendent evaluation process goals and instrument.
Second.
Motion by myself, second by Ms. Faulkner. All in agreement, raise your hand, please. Motion passes 5-1. And with No further business then. We are adjourned at 7:28. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, guys.